across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Belfast on the brink in night 2. We will be live there in just a few minutes. We'll also speak to a number of politicians, including the one who's very close to Stephen Ogilvy's family. Stephen is, of course, lying in hospital in a coma at the moment after that attack for which a man was remanded in custody today. We'll also speak to a public order expert. We'll talk about this from every angle, including the immigration angle. And if you want to let us know your thoughts on all of that, please do get in touch, 0344 499 1000. We've heard a lot about it today and we'll be covering it in depth this evening. We'll also be talking about whether immigration policy is to blame for the stabbing and subsequent protests. What do you think of that? Also, is there a two-tier jobs market? The government is covering visa costs almost unbelievably for people coming to this country. This is a government that's just passed legislation that makes it much more expensive to employ people. And there are, of course, as we know, many people not in education, employment or training. So why are we importing people and actually encouraging them to do so by giving money for their visas? It just seems very, very strange. Should the triple lock for pensions be axed? That's what one think tank, the Resolution Foundation, has said. The pensions minister actually used to be the chief executive of that. More on Nicola Sturgeon and her husband, Peter Merrill. He made 50 grand from a Portuguese villa after claiming legal aid from you and me. So much to discuss on that as well. Also, a little bit later on, we'll be talking about black boys. Should police stop and search more of them? That's what Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, says as well. So much to talk about this evening. So many big stories around. The biggest, of course, in Northern Ireland. So much to get in touch about, and please give me your thoughts on all of it. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or a WhatsApp voice note, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Let's get started here in the Evening Exchange. Lots to discuss this Wednesday night. Well, the Prime Minister held talks with some of the Northern Ireland parties today in Westminster. He also spoke at Prime Minister's Questions. As you may know, I review Prime Minister's Questions every week, every Wednesday that it's on, with Julia Hartley-Brewer in this studio during her programme, which is on between 10 and 1. This is what the Prime Minister said at Prime Minister's Questions today.
People are rightly sickened by the horrific attack on Monday night in North Belfast. As you have just said, the man arrested has been in court in Belfast this morning and charged. I want to thank the Police Service of Northern Ireland and other first responders and members of the public who responded with such bravery. And our thoughts are with the victim. The acts of violence and arson that followed are totally unjustified. This morning I spoke with the First Minister, the Deputy First Minister and the Chief Constable. We are united in calling for calm and determined to restore order, support the police and all those on the front line, and ensure that justice is done.
27 people were made homeless by the rioting in Belfast last night. It's really interesting that the family of Stephen Ogilvy, who is the man who is in hospital in a coma this evening, he sustained a number of injuries and lost his left eye in the attack. Well, his family said they're completely devastated by the horrific attack. This has been a massive shock to our whole family, and right now our only priority is being at his bedside and helping him to recover. They said, we are aware of the tensions and talk of protests following this incident. We want to make it absolutely clear overnight unrest is not welcome and peaceful protest is the only way forward. We have many migrants who make a deeply valuable contribution to our country, including in our healthcare system and hospitality sector, and we depend on them to make our country work. We do not want this terrible tragedy to be used to divide people or fuel hostility. They've appealed for information and asked people to give information to the police as well. Where did this come from? Where did this attack come from? What happened and what were the sources of it? And what's the source of the outrage as well? I am really interested to know that, because I find so many different politicians who are talking about this, condemning, of course, the people who led to those people becoming homeless, burning the bus in Belfast, burning people out of their homes. Nobody wants to see that. No, that's not justified at all. It is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. And if people want to protest, well, they should do so peacefully, as the Ogilvy family have said. Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, was asked about this today at a press conference. This is what he said.
And is it any surprise that people in Belfast and elsewhere are scared? None of that justifies what was perpetrated by some bad actors last night. There's no doubt about that. There were some very, very bad actors doing bad things, but the vast majority of those people who were out on the streets in Belfast last night were not far right, were not extremists, just really scared about what's going on in their communities and about the lack of government action. There's none.
Nigel Farage there speaking at a press conference earlier today. The Chief Constable of Northern Ireland, John Boucher, had this to say earlier too.
We will be on the streets tonight in numbers even more than we were last night, and we have got arrangements in hand to get mutual aid that will be arriving here tomorrow, and we're looking to get a further some 200 officers to get on the streets to deal with this. These young people who are doing this are changing their own lives for the future. They won't have the opportunities they would otherwise have had. So please, please, please think of that if you know anybody who could be involved in this. And as regards to schools and businesses and people who live in these neighbourhoods that have been affected, I completely understand, having witnessed the events of last night and I was out in Belfast, why people would make that decision. I support people who make that decision to make sure they're keeping their school children, their employees, their businesses safe. This will pass. I hope last night was the event that will see the end of any more protest, because we cannot have any more of this. And we will be, as I say, out in very high numbers this afternoon and this evening, policing whatever happens in Belfast and wider Northern Ireland today.
The Chief Constable of the Police Service in Northern Ireland there, the man to his left, Hilary Benn, and the Northern Ireland Secretary, also took part in that. The First Minister of Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill, had this to say.
People were concerned, people were worried for safety, all very understandable emotions. But what we saw spill onto our streets since Monday night has been nothing short of thuggery. What we saw has been nothing short of racism. We saw youths taken to the streets, young men masked, attacking families, burning them out of their homes, attacking public property, attacking businesses. All we've seen is criminality on our streets and a real, I think, a real attempt to underline racism in our society, which I do not believe is widespread.
All we've seen is criminality, is what she said. I'm not so sure about that. Let's speak to Christian Drogan, who's a reporter for Watchman UK on the ground in Belfast for a second night. Christian, what's the atmosphere like there? And thanks for joining us again.
Right now, Peter, good to be with you. Right now, it's very calm. I'm just actually outside a migrant hotel where there's a protest crowd gathering. There's crowds of people in front of me heading down towards it. There's police and crowds behind me. I have to just pick up on what some of the Northern Irish authorities were saying then. They, I was on the streets last night, and I have to say the vast majority of people were not involved in criminality. It only takes two people, although it might look a spectacle on the camera and in people's lenses, it only takes two people to set a bin on fire, or one person even, but two people to push it to a bus. And next thing you know, there's a big fire in the street. It wasn't all people. People are coming out and protesting rightfully and peacefully. It's not, it's not a whole load of criminals running around. It's not like that.
Certainly. What is the plan for this evening? Obviously, you're outside a migrant hotel. Will we see, do you think, the same protests on the same scale this evening? Clearly, the police are getting ready for those. We heard the Chief Constable talking about not only the many officers on the streets tonight, but also mutual aid coming tomorrow from other police forces. Yeah, I mean, there's been a few protest locations named for tonight. Whether that spills into sort of disorder, I'm not sure. But right now, let's just focus on what's behind me. There's a migrant hotel behind me, and
on the opposite side of the road, literally directly opposite, there's a children's nursery. Now, it's this kind of people are expressing their dismay at sort of like the lack of thought that's gone into placing these migrants in this hotel across the road, knowing what we know and going off of what's happened and just looking at the stats of previous attacks and various things like that. We don't know who these people are, and they've been housed opposite a nursery.
Yeah,
so
that's obviously an area of concern. In terms of what happened last night, what have people been saying to you in Belfast today? The locals you've been speaking to.
So the locals that we've been speaking to, I mean, it's pretty much they've had enough. They're not being listened to. They are not. What are we supposed to? What they're saying is, what are we supposed to do if we're not being listened to? What are we supposed to do? No one's listening to us. What are we supposed to do? That's as simple as it is. And maybe if people were listened to, it might be dealt with a little bit differently. That's the feeling from the street anyway.
Thank you very much. That's Christian Drogan there, reporter for Watchman UK, on the ground in Belfast for a second night. We may well check in with him later on in the programme. I'm going to want to speak to Philip Brett now. He is an Assembly member in Belfast for the DUP for North Belfast, and Stephen Ogilvie is his constituent. Philip, thank you for joining me on the programme again. I want to talk about Stephen and his family in a second, but perhaps I could just, if you could just paint a picture of how things are tonight for us. I know that public transport has stopped, businesses have closed, there are children, of course, it's exam season, perhaps not attending exams today. There's real fear, isn't there, in regard to the tense nature of what is happening in Belfast at the moment and what the picture has been in the last couple of days.
Yeah, good evening, Peter, and thank you for having me. I do want to just start off by challenging some of the comments that were made by the First Minister of Northern Ireland, Michelle O'Neill. No one in Northern Ireland is going to take lectures on the issue of violence from Michelle O'Neill, a lady who said there was no alternative to violence and terrorism here in Northern Ireland. I also want to challenge her claim that everyone on the streets in Northern Ireland last night were racist or criminal. I was on the streets last night, unlike the First Minister, trying to bring calm.
And you're neither racist nor a criminal, Philip, and there are thousands of people like you.
Correct. And unlike the First Minister, I was on the street trying to make sure that actions did not take place. But in Belfast, people are very concerned. On Monday evening, what we witnessed and what has gone across social media and across the world is the attempted beheading of one of my constituents, and we cannot get away from that. The First Minister, in her remarks, fails to acknowledge that point. I will be the first to stand up to anyone who engages in violence, who engages in intimidation. But there's responsibility on all political leaders to tackle the root cause of this issue, which has been the impact of uncontrolled illegal immigration here in Northern Ireland. And unfortunately, some of our political leaders do not want to recognise that. My community is very clear that they have seen the impact of that, and I will continue to give them a peaceful and democratic voice to articulate their concerns.
I certainly want to talk about uncontrolled immigration and how it becomes controlled. Let's do that in a second. But I know that you have been speaking to Stephen Ogilvie's family. I know that he is a constituent of yours in your North Belfast constituency. I read out a bit of their statement earlier on today. Clearly their focus is Stephen, and we know that he is in a coma and has sustained numerous injuries, including to his left eye. He's lost the sight in his left eye. Can you just tell us how they're doing and how they're being supported?
Yeah, the entire community here in North Belfast has rallied around the family, and the family have been overwhelmed by the support and prayers that have been sent to them. They're particularly grateful to the first responders and indeed members of the local community who stepped in to remove the assailant and the attacker to ensure that they saved Stephen's life. I was just speaking to them before coming on here today, and they have been up at the hospital visiting Stephen. He does remain critical, but he is in a stable condition. Their focus is on ensuring we get justice for Stephen, that the perpetrator faces the full force of the law and ultimately is removed from the United Kingdom, because this gentleman should never have been here in North Belfast, he should not have been in Northern Ireland, and he should not have been in the United Kingdom. And that's where their family focus remains, and ensure that we're not distracted by people, minority people, engaging in violence.
We know that at Belfast Magistrates Court today, Hadi Oludid was remanded in custody for 4 weeks. He's 30 years old, charged with the attempted stabbing and murder of Stephen Ogilvie, threats to kill an NHS radiographer, and possession of a knife. We'll obviously make sure that the law takes its course, and everyone on this programme this evening is going to be absolutely aware of the fact that there are active legal proceedings. On the broader issue, you talked about uncontrolled immigration. We talk a lot on this station about the border in the English Channel and the people on boats coming across. Just paint a picture for people who may not quite be as familiar as you and I are, coming from the part of the world that we both come from, about what the border is in regard to Northern Ireland when it comes to immigration, because people, I've been speaking to English people in particular, have been absolutely astonished that someone can fly to Paris, then fly to Dublin, get on a bus, and then through this, I mean, it's been described by some in the media as a loophole. I think it's a bit more than a loophole, through the Irish border because of the freedom for movement of people. That's existed for 100 years, but of course, very, very different 100 years ago to how the picture is now.
Exactly, and so the common travel area that operates here in Northern Ireland allows people to freely move across the border. And the gentleman who was in court today, his movements into the United Kingdom was through Paris, was through into the Republic of Ireland, and then he entered the United Kingdom to claim asylum. So he came through a number of countries to get to the United Kingdom. No reason for him to be here in the United Kingdom, and there was no action taken at the border to ensure that he did not get across. So you'll have seen at Prime Minister's questions today, our party leader in the House of Commons made clear that the Prime Minister now needs to get a grip of this. We have checks of people who are moving from Northern Ireland into the Irish Republic. We now need to make sure that that is stepped up on the other direction, and that people are not illegally entering the United Kingdom through this loophole.
The government says that it's going to intensify immigration enforcement to track down, detain, arrest and remove illegal migrants in Northern Ireland. They talk about the Home Secretary investing $3.7 billion into immigration enforcement over the next 3 years, including in Northern Ireland. It's going to increase by 20% by 2028, 2029. Regarding the common travel area, they're talking about intelligence-led operations led by Immigration Enforcement and Border Force to detect, track down, arrest and remove illegal immigrants. More than 1,000 illegal immigrants have been removed in the last year alone. Is that enough, do you think? Is that plan enough?
It's clearly not enough, and I would invite the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister to come to North Belfast and see the impact that that is having. People are entering into Northern Ireland through the Irish Republic on a daily basis. The records and the numbers are clear at the amount that that is at, and I just hope that this is a wake-up call to the UK government, that they finally step up and tackle the issue of illegal immigration of people moving into the United Kingdom from the Irish Republic.
Were you, I mean, we were all shocked, of course, with what happened to Stephen this week. It is an absolutely horrendous and dreadful attack. And please, when you're speaking to the family, every single person to talk and every single one of our viewers and listeners sending their very, very best wishes to Stephen and his family. Can you please just tell me your thoughts about how, I mean, I'm sure you're as shocked as I was, but were you actually surprised that something like this had happened, given everything we've just been talking about in regard to immigration?
I was, having grown up in North Belfast, we have seen some awful sights over the years during our troubled past, but to see on the streets of our capital city the attempted removal of body parts by an individual that was broadcast across the world was really beyond measure and beyond description. The entire community here in North Belfast was shaken to its core. And we just want to see justice for the family and ensure that we finally have an immigration system that protects the people here in Northern Ireland.
Philip, thank you for joining me this evening. That's Philip Brett there, who is an Assembly member for the Democratic Unionists. They're the largest unionist party in Northern Ireland. Philip's been speaking to the families, the Ogilvie family. They have appealed for calm. They've said that they want to make absolutely clear overnight unrest is not welcome. Peaceful protest is the only way forward. That is from the victim's family, Stephen Ogilvie, and that has been, of course, echoed by Philip Brett there, the Assembly member for the DUP. Let's speak to Mark in Lincolnshire, who's given me a ring. Mark, I think there was maybe a technical issue. You couldn't get through to Kevin. You're very welcome to speak to me. What would you like to say about this story?
Hi there, Peter.
Hello.
Hi there. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously horrific. I mean, I have actually seen it. I've only seen the blurred version, thankfully. I wouldn't want to watch the
No, well, we made a very clear decision as a station not to show the video.
Understand that. I can very well understand that. As I say, the blurred version was bad enough on its own.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't really see enough, but you got. It showed enough.
Well, even just hearing the detail of it is enough, really, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it had been for me, and it appeared by accident on a bloody thing I was watching on YouTube.
Right.
And I thought,
what do you think of it, Mark? What do you think of this issue and where it has come from?
Well, it's obviously it relates to immigration. It's not. I don't believe it's anything really about assimilation. Or integration or anything. I just don't think these people can integrate on the whole. The cultures that they come from are so vastly different. Now, that's not to say that, a lot of them or even most of them may well make some kind of life, but they're not really integrating because they can't. Because the way they view life is completely different.
Some people are integrating, but many are staying absolutely separate.
Sorry?
Some people are integrating, but some are staying absolutely separate.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I'm sure we've had a similar discussion before, Peter. I mean, how do you define integration? Because a lot of these people, they tend to, what you tend to find throughout the West, really, wherever you've had heavy levels of immigration, is you just create a series of groups, that all have in-group preference for themselves.
Yeah.
You see this all the time. The grooming gangs is evidence of that. You see that. Even the.
But there are many people who come to this country and do adopt British values and do integrate. I mean that is evident.
As I said, Peter, I'm not talking about everybody.
No, of course,
what I'm saying is, as a cultural thing.
Yeah.
You are going to have these issues.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these people, like this chap, I mean, who knows what's going on with him? Obviously,
they're active court proceedings, Mark, so we'll just be really, really careful what we say. But I think you've made your point, and thank you for it. Neil says, Cardi P, I hope your friends and family are all okay. A number of people said that to me, and I just want to say everybody's absolutely fine. My family lives pretty far from Belfast and from where this stuff is happening, and I thank you to everybody who has said that to me. I really appreciate it, but just to reiterate, everybody's absolutely okay and just as horrified as everybody else at this attack and wanting there to be peace and wanting there to be stability, of course. Neil says, clearly the scenes from last night are really disturbing. I don't think it's the last we will see unless the government starts acting on the concerns of the population. But what really astounds me is the rage shown by Starmer at the actions of the protesters while making the usual platitudes about the attack. Paul and Stoke says, interesting when it's in Belfast, Starmer appeals for calm, not threatening everyone involved with prison, maybe because he is terrified of what may come if he tries to threaten them as he does with the protesters in England. Rob says, political elite immediately condemning this week's reaction from Menite and savage attack, yet not heard the phrase mostly peaceful this week. Interesting as it's the common phrase with the thugs in the pro-Palestinian march as well. It's very interesting you mentioned that. The First Minister, Michelle O'Neill, talking about we have seen nothing but criminality, I think was the phrase, or a similar phrase that she used a little bit earlier, which I just found quite strange because there have been many people who have not acted with criminal intent or done anything criminal. There are many people who have simply acted entirely peacefully in all of that. Billy in East Yorkshire says the Henry Novak protesters swiftly received around 3 years jail time for stupidly throwing a few traffic cones at police, while the two brothers who were recorded on CCTV punching police officers in the face at Manchester Airport struggled to be doled out any real conviction due to jury deadlock, and the CPS not pursuing further prosecution. Make it make sense. Well, Billy, there are some developments in that. First of all, the people who were the protesters in Southampton were doing a bit more than what you say. The CCTV in Manchester Airport, certainly, I mean, it's astonishing to me, and we've covered it at the time, that one of the brothers will serve no jail time. The other one will, because he was convicted in an earlier trial. But Billy, I think you raise, in general, I think you raise some very, very good and straightforward arguments there about sensible arguments, actually, about two-tier justice. Lots to discuss on all of this. We're going to go to the debate desk in a second. Benjamin Butterworth and Candice Holdsworth, apologies, are with us. We will talk to them in just a second. Stay with us.
Valdo Calacane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Tad, who's been in touch. He says, evening, Peter. Evening, Tad. Those who would smash up the community and its infrastructure are being dealt with by rapid justice and acceptance that strong deterrents are often necessary. So having accepted the principle of deterrence, we may ask, why haven't adequate deterrents been used to deter all the people coming across in boats? The answer is easy. Starmer actually wants them to come, except he still tries to con everybody. The opposite is true. He's a liar, he's disreputable, and he's unfit to hold public office of any kind, says Tad. Well, thank you for that. We'll get to more of your calls, text, tweets, and voice notes very, very soon, but I want to go to the debate desk now. Candace Holdsworth is with us. Hello, lovely to see you. How are you doing?
Yes, well, I'm good.
And Benjamin Butterworth. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Tell us your thoughts on the unrest in Belfast and what happens tonight, do you think? And indeed, what the response from the authorities, all politicians, has been, Benjamin?
Well, what happened, was horrific. I mean, it doesn't bear watching, and it obviously gives echoes of what happened to Lee Rigby 13 years ago. The idea that it happened and seems slightly less shocking is very revealing about how numb we've become to this kind of violence. I think that, as the family have stated, just like the family of Henry Novak 10 days earlier, they do not want this to be used to stir up racial violence, to stir up rioting on the streets. And it's incredibly depressing that within 24 hours, the story becomes the appalling behaviour of looters and rioters and violent thugs that may well be racists that have used this as an excuse to go out and attack people. I mean, I saw one woman in Northern Ireland in Belfast saying that her black neighbours are staying inside because they fear that there could be consequences if they went out.
There are lots of people staying inside. I mean, there are definitely people of colour and immigrants who are very worried. I've actually just received a WhatsApp from a good friend in Belfast who says Belfast is deserted, like the Drumcree days here. That's 30 years ago when there were the country was basically shut down because of problems over a march. Now it's to do with this attack and worries about that. We've also heard from the family of Stephen Ogilvie, who's the victim of that dreadful attack the other day, and the family have very clearly said, we want to make it absolutely clear that overnight unrest is not welcome and peaceful protest is the only way forward. It's been interesting as well to hear from the First Minister of Northern Ireland, Michelle O'Neill, who said, well, actually, can we play Michelle O'Neill again, actually? Because I just want to hear exactly her words in this, because I think there is a disagreement about the intentions of some of the protesters. This is what Michelle O'Neill, Sinn Féin's First Minister of Northern Ireland, said about this today.
People were concerned, people were worried for safety, all very understandable emotions. But what we saw spill onto our streets since Monday night has been nothing short of thuggery. What we saw has been nothing short of racism. We saw youths taken to the streets, young men masked, attacking families, burning them out of their homes, attacking public property, attacking businesses. All we've seen is criminality on our streets and a real attempt to underline racism in our society, which I do not believe is widespread.
It's really interesting. She said all we've seen is criminality on our streets. Candace, is that fair? We've definitely seen some of it. I'm not saying for a second that hasn't happened. 27 people don't have a home to go to this evening, and that's totally to be condemned. But is it fair for her to say, to tar everyone with that brush?
I don't think everyone who goes out onto the streets is a thug and is a racist. I think that there's a huge amount of anger in this country, in many other countries around the world, over what people feel are the government's failures on immigration. And I think what's happening is we're moving into revolutionary territory where people don't feel that what the government does on immigration is legitimate. And then they begin to take to the streets because they're so frustrated. And then, of course, you get the absolute thugs who I totally condemn, who set things on fire and attack individual people. That's 100% wrong. But I do feel we're in a situation now where something's going going to blow because people so desperately want something to be done about immigration, and it's not being done.
Let's hope it doesn't. Let's hope it, like the Ogilvy family says, stays peaceful. I was very struck last night. There was a very, very good caller. From memory, Alice in Belfast was the person who was on the line, and it was a really interesting call. And she said, I'm paraphrasing here, but she said, look, her mother is 70 years old, she never protested about anything, stayed out of the troubles, didn't get involved in any way, and she went out last night. She went out to peacefully protest about the fact that she feels enough is enough. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, Benjamin.
But protesting and frustration and, you know, contained anger and voting in ways to stop this is completely acceptable. You can do that with whatever issue you care passionately about. What frustrates me is that we now are seeing a pattern of certain players like Nigel Farage, like Rupert Lowe, who want to stir up the anger, who want to encourage the anger, and then when people, as well as legitimate protests, go out and do appalling things, as they do time and time again, suddenly they go silent and go to ground.
Rupert Lowe said specifically that there's no point in breaking the law because it destroys your life.
But then he also tweeted, millions must go. Now, if you're...
In what way is that encouraging violence?
Well, if you're an ethnic minority person, the kind of people that's going to be assumed to be a migrant in Northern Ireland or the rest of the UK, then you are going to find yourself on the receiving end of this anger quite unduly. That is what that narrative builds.
But you could mean that in a I don't know what was in Rupert Lowe's mind, but if you put together those two tweets and say, one is don't take part in any violence, it'll ruin your life, which is true, because if you get caught and you go through the court system, it will ruin your life. If he's also saying millions must go, I mean, I probably wouldn't personally tweet something like that, but that may well be a sentiment and a peacefully held sentiment. That's not whipping things up, that's expressing an opinion.
I think that's a dog whistle that these kind of violent racists hear very clearly, and it would be irresponsible to think that these things happen in isolation and in abstract. I think what's happened in recent years is that they feel like they have permission to behave in this way.
But surely does that not come back to the fact that we need to discuss immigration, we need to have an honest discussion about it. And if you have the Michelle O'Neills of this world, or indeed when it comes to Keir Starmer talking about the Southport riots, for example, the riots that were there as a result of that, and he's essentially saying that everybody involved is a far-right thug and we can't, you know, discuss this in a reasonable way, surely that suppresses it, surely that makes the pressure cooker worse.
But an honest conversation would involve people condemning the outright racists and violent looters, or maybe they're not being completely honest about what they're willing to tolerate.
I interviewed Yusuf the other day, he did exactly that.
Except that Nigel Farage, when asked again and again and again...
Well, that was in Parliament,
but... would not say...
Well, that was in Parliament last Wednesday, but there've been many occasions... There've been many occasions where Reform UK and Nigel Farage have condemned that. I interviewed Zia Yusuf the other day. He told me that. He said he totally condemned what had happened when it came to those people breaking the law over Henry Novak. That's what he said.
But Nigel Farage, again and again in recent weeks, has refused to make those statements.
I don't think that's true.
He has, he absolutely has. He's been asked again and again. We saw it in Parliament as one example.
Yusuf is the Home Affairs spokesman. I asked him directly the exact question on Sunday, and he completely, straightforwardly condemned it.
But this is exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to still play to the relative centre ground that might elect them, while knowing full well that they're under threat from their right, and that's why people like Nigel Farage won't condemn outright violence, which ought to be a very easy thing to do.
I think he has. Is that fair, Candice?
No, I think that people are getting things the wrong way round. I don't think they're whipping it up. I think in many ways they just sort of echo what's already there. I don't think this is just confined to Britain. This is everywhere. I mean, populist right-wing parties are on the rise all throughout Europe and in other countries in the world because people are very, very angry about what they see as lax border policies, high immigration, and also economic malaise. So I don't think you can pin it on particular figures.
We'll talk more about this in just a second. I'll take more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots more to discuss on all of this. Candace, very, very interesting to see what some of the politicians have been saying in Westminster about what's happened in Northern Ireland. We know from our reporter that there are further protests tonight. What is your sense of this and whether the government has a grip on it?
Well, I find it interesting that the counter-terrorism czar, Jonathan Hall, has come out and he's now said that we need to start treating immigration as a security issue.
Yes.
So it tells me that they're grasping what the problem is and actually the urgency of it and actually how the public see it, because that is first and foremost how the public see it, as a security issue. I think that they know that they have to start moving towards the public on this, and that, like you say, you can't suppress the debate. If you suppress the debate, actually that's when you create a pressure cooker. People need to feel like there are breathing holes, that there are things happening, that the people who govern over them, like I say, are legitimate, that they're reflecting back at them the democratic wishes of the people.
Okay, I want to talk just... Sorry, had you any further thoughts on it? No. Okay, just read maybe a little bit more on this statement from the family. This is Stephen Ogilvie, who's the victim. We're completely devastated by the horrific attack on our loved one on Kinnaird Avenue, which is in North Belfast. That's where the attack happened on Monday night. This has been a massive shock to our whole family, and right now our only priority is being at his bedside and helping him recover. We want to say a profound thank you to the local people who bravely stepped in during the attack. Your quick actions absolutely saved his life, and we will never forget what you did for him in that moment. We also want to thank the emergency services and the doctors and nurses. We're aware of tensions and talk of protests following the incident, says the family of Stephen Ogilvie. We want to make it absolutely clear that overnight unrest is not welcome, and peaceful protest is the only way forward. We have many migrants who make a deeply valuable contribution to our country, including in our healthcare system and hospitality sector, and we depend on them to make our country work. We do not want this terrible tragedy to be used to divide people or to fuel hostility. We are asking the media and the public to please give us some space. We need privacy to focus on our family right now without cameras or people speculating about what happened. If you know anything at all about the attack or saw anything strange near Kinnaird Avenue, please go to the police. Thank you for respecting our privacy, says the Ogilvie family. Well, lots more to discuss on that, of course. We will talk about that as time goes on and as the programme goes on. We will be speaking actually a bit later on to one of the unionist leaders in Northern Ireland who's a public order expert. He's a former senior officer in the police service of Northern Ireland, and if you do have thoughts on any of that, please do give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. There's just a number of other issues in the news today that I want to discuss with Candace and with Benjamin. And this is an interesting one on visas. It's a bit related to the immigration aspect of things as well. I was kind of astonished at this. Rachel Reeves says she's going to reimburse British firms £5,000 per foreign worker in a bid to make the country more attractive, despite the UK's growing youth unemployment crisis. The government is going to subsidise high-growth firms up to £25,000 in visa costs for high-skilled workers hired from abroad and their dependents under a scheme expected to be announced on Wednesday. Candace, I can understand how you if these are high-growth firms, well, surely they will have the money anyway. And what about the literally over 1 million young people who are not in education, employment or training? Your thoughts?
They've been doing this for years. So Labour under Tony Blair did this in the late 90s. So they said they wanted to fill shortages in the economy. So they went all around the world to try and find people. I'm so against this. I do not think government should be picking winners. I think we should let the free market decide. You should be able to innovate your way out of it as a company, or you wither and die. And that's the way it goes. It is, like you say, it is so unfair that right now we have so many people out of work who are dying to find work, who could actually use this money to start a business for interest.
Well, I just find it quite strange that every business I speak to, and I speak to quite a few of them, not just through here, but just in life, and so many people talk about national insurance rises, they talk about minimum wage, they talk about the fact that it now costs an extra, on average, £3,500 to employ a 21-year-old, and yet here the government is saying they're encouraging more foreign workers. Maybe it's two separate debates. What do you think?
I think it is two separate debates. I mean, this makes total sense. This is essentially a tax incentive to get high growth firms to keep that growth and to incentivise getting the most talented people to work in the United Kingdom. You know, if you look around the world at places like Dubai, Singapore, they have built remarkable economies on attracting the best talent from around the world. And London needs to continue to compete on this, and many of these people will be in the capital.
Given that 99% of businesses in the UK are small to medium-sized businesses that have 7 employees or fewer, surely giving tax breaks, I'm not saying don't do both, I mean, surely giving tax breaks to young people, saying, you know, if you have an apprenticeship scheme, we'll give you a tax break. If you're employing a young person who doesn't have a degree, for example, on an apprenticeship or with skills, we'll give you a tax break. Or alternatively, you're creating more graduate jobs, you're doing a tax break. Instead, what the government's done is made it more expensive for those people to be employed. If you're harmonising the minimum wage, for example, it now costs the same to employ a 21-year-old as a 17-year-old. You're going to go for the 21-year-old who has 4 years' experience.
Look, but those things aren't mutually exclusive, and I think they're different questions about the economy. The fact that as the Milburn report showed, the access points for new workers, whether it's a hospitality job to understand the value of work, or whether it's lower skilled graduate jobs disappearing because of a tech revolution, that's a problem. But it's also the case that the kind of workers we're talking about here, we're probably talking about quite specialised businesses. I wouldn't be surprised if many of these are in the tech industry, where we still have the biggest in Europe. And so if you've got people with high value, specific skills that have a choice of other very desirable locations in the world, getting them to London is essentially an investment, or to the UK, but I suspect many of them will be the capital with these jobs, because these are people that will pay considerable amounts of tax, may well go on to set up their own businesses in these industries. And so I dare say that a £5,000, maximum £5,000 deduction from the costs will probably be repaid quite quickly by people that are earning 100, 200 grand. Okay. And that pays for all of us.
Candice?
I just worry as well that this is ripe for cheating and scamming. I mean, we've seen already with the skilled visa, it's being used to hire people to like obscure vape shops in the middle of nowhere. Apparently they need 17 high-skilled employees, and the Home Office has just let it happen. It's a real problem. We actually do have some of the most highly skilled graduates in the world. We produce brilliant people in science and tech. In fact, American companies hire British people in Britain to save on costs, because actually our salaries can't compete with American salaries. So we actually have all these brilliant people, and I feel like a lot of this is we don't encourage a culture of entrepreneurship, and that's one of the big problems we have. You know, we have a very conservative investment community in this country, and if government gave loads of incentives, loads of tax incentives to people to start up businesses that pay well, I think that would be a much better solution.
Betty says it's high skills, or if no skills available in the UK to train locals. Each permit costs £12,000 to £35,000 to bring in these specialists, and there are high-value industries, but the scheme is another gimmick to try to placate AI and tech industry, who are all leaving due to energy and taxes. Now then, Benjamin, I think it's fair to say you have a thick skin.
Yes, I have to.
I'm going to read out a couple of messages and then let you respond. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ivor says, it's nonsense that Nigel Farage wasn't condemning the rioters. Benjamin was referring to the hecklers during PMQs, shouting, do you condemn them, whom Nigel ignored. Of course, during PMQs, nobody answers the rabble in the House. Lorraine goes a bit further and says, your male guest, I'm sorry to say, and I don't usually say this, but he's a complete liar. Nigel Farage has condemned the violence. He also condemned it again today in front of the press conference. Unfortunately, just like Sebastian Salek yesterday, both seek to deflect from the real issue, which is unvetted, uncontrolled illegal immigration. They would rather gaslight us with false information surrounding reform. Your guest needs to understand we see completely through him disgraceful political gaming, which will no longer work. Benjamin.
Well, Sebastian is also a great person, and I think absolutely Nigel Farage is sending a dog whistle to people that are just racist, and that undermines an honest conversation. The phrase about pure cold rage was exactly what the Henry Novak family didn't want, and I just think that when you have these riots, when you have these outpourings on the streets that cause damage...
Wasn't he talking about what the nation was feeling, pure cold rage? That is what the nation was feeling.
He was showing exactly why he's not capable of being Prime Minister, because a leader is there to answer the calls for rage, not to call for them. And instead of
calling for rage, rage. He said that he had pure cold rage.
And what did we see? We saw that on the streets afterwards. We saw the violence and the racism online. But it should be his job to lead and to calm, and he doesn't do that. He wants to embrace it because he knows his power is in the raw and not in the solving problems. And I think that might work in opposition, but it is exposing exactly why he won't be able to lead and unite a country if he becomes Prime Minister.
Keir Starmer lead? Has he been leading on this?
Well, I think Keir Starmer deals with these things sensibly and moderately, and actually shouting and getting angry doesn't fix the problems. What you need is somebody who, for example, has brought down immigration numbers by more than 80%, which is what's happened since Labour came into power.
Although Rishi Sunak has certainly taken some credit for that. Candice, what do you make of what Benjamin's saying there?
I don't think that you can just... I don't think Keir Starmer has been adequate. I think Keir Starmer has created a lot of frustration because he kind of goes back to his comfort zone and he just calls everyone far right. I feel like his way of thinking is stuck 10, 15 years ago where you could just dismiss this stuff out of hand, and he doesn't seem to me to connect with the moment. Whereas I think Nigel Farage, and I'm not saying this as a supporter of any political party, I do feel like he's more willing to say those sorts of things.
Thank you both very much. Lots to discuss on the debate desk and indeed throughout the programme, right through until 10 o'clock. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, 0344 499 1000. Back on the debate desk with Benjamin and Candice in a second.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the kick-off for England's World Cup warm-up match against Costa Rica, which was scheduled to start in just over an hour's time at 9 o'clock, that's been delayed due to stormy weather in Orlando. If this is happening already, should we expect further disruption when the tournament commences properly? I mean, it's very bad news, and I'm very sorry for all England fans who may have been turning over from this programme to watch England. You can stick with us right through till 10 o'clock, but the kick-off, as I say, for England's World Cup warm-up match against Costa Rica has been delayed due to stormy weather in Orlando, in Florida. The World Cup, of course, happening in Mexico and the United States and Canada as well. So we'll bring you any latest lines on that, but that has been postponed. Do we know how long it's been postponed for? We don't know just yet. As soon as we know, we will let you know. Neil says your channel does, even your channel do not recognise that assimilation is very different to integration. Integration is a person who will learn the language, use the money, go to school, get a job, etc. Assimilation is that you've become one of us. You marry our children, you support our team, you become one of us. Third generation Pakistanis in Bradford will only ever marry within their own group, still to this day. I mean, I don't think you say that about every single third generation Pakistani in Bradford. I don't know a third generation Irish or Polish person that doesn't regard themselves as British first. Well, I can show you quite a few Irish people who don't believe they're British first, but maybe you're talking about people who are in Britain. But I'm still within that. I'm afraid I would disagree with you, Neil. But listen, thank you for your comment. Anyway, Richard says, This will only get worse with people like Benjamin. People riot when people are ignored. Stormer ignored peaceful protests and bans politicians from speaking. Deb says, I get that violence is dreadful, but peaceful demonstrating doesn't have any effect with this government. It's dreadful and really scary for the future. Typical of Benjamin to blame Nigel. Blame lies fair and square with the traitors in government, says Sue. And Gary also not happy. Paul says, I find it very curious how the government has miraculously found £3 billion to track down and detain and deport illegal migrants just a week before the election. Talk about trying to buy votes. We are, of course, talking about the Makerfield by-election, and we will continue to talk about that. Final message before I go back to Benjamin and Candace. Good evening, Peter. Great show as always. Thank you. Jane in Milton Keynes. My thoughts are with the families and those who have been devastated by these individuals who've been invited into your country by some thoughtless people. Can I say that in my 67 years, says Jane, I've watched and learned that only stupid people would mess with the Irish. The Irish people have my full respect, says Jane. Yes, I have learned in my 42 years that it's not a good idea to mess with the Irish in general, or indeed the Northern Irish. Let's talk about the triple lock. There is a think tank, the Resolution Foundation, of which the Pensions Minister, Torsten Henriksen Bell, he de-poshified it to Torsten Bell before he became an MP, has said that the triple lock should be abolished and entitled asset-rich retirees should be taxed more, and that the triple lock shouldn't happen the way it is. Candace, what do you make of this?
OK, I really don't like that sort of language where he's sort of targeting pensioners as if they're all equally wealthy. But I do agree, financially, if you look at it objectively, the welfare bill, including the triple lock, is becoming financially unsustainable. But I don't like the blaming language. A lot of that is to do with the fact that we have poor growth and we have a fertility crisis. So in the future, we're just not going to be able to fund pensions the way we are. I'm totally OK with the solution that they have, that, you know, instead of ratcheting up the triple lock whenever inflation goes up or earnings, it's slower so that they can manage the public finances. Totally OK with that. I don't like the intergenerational conflict, though, sort of pointing the fingers at older people. That I really, really, really disagree with.
What I find time and time again, Benjamin, I don't know about you, is you have a lot of people who are not active politicians. We've seen Jeremy Hunt, the former Chancellor, recently saying, oh yes, the triple lock has to go. Find me the serving politician who will say the triple lock has to go. Reform UK, for example, don't have that policy. They're committed to the triple lock as well. They've changed their opinion on that. What do you make of this debate?
Well, I mean, there was a time when Kemi Badenoch suggested it in her first run for Tory leader, but she quickly ran back from that. And I won't name the person, someone very senior in Reform. I debated this with in recent months, and when we came off air, that person said, well, of course, I don't believe that. They should get rid of the triple lock, but it's not party policy. So they all say this privately, and it's because it's totally unsustainable. 5 years ago, the cost of pensions and pension benefits was about £100 billion. The end of this financial year, it will be £170 billion. This cost is crippling the country. It is the majority of the welfare bill. And it's because the triple lock means that you've had two things in the last 5 years. One is that we had 10%, 12% inflation, so they got that rise in the pensions. And then in a year or two after the end of COVID, we saw some decent wage growth of about 6%, so they got 6% rise. So they benefit from everything. Now, this is unsustainable. We have a scenario where the average retiree has more disposable income than someone working a full-time job in their 20s. Meanwhile, you know, they've paid off their homes. And so when we're looking at the welfare bill and the tax burden, I'm afraid right now we are stealing from the workers to give to the most financially comfortable.
Sorry, I should have asked you a minute ago. I do apologise, Benjamin. I should have asked, is there anything that the texters have said, anything further that you wanted to respond to?
I think the less I say in response, the better.
OK,
I'll do.
I just want to give you that opportunity, and apologies I didn't do it immediately. I'll come back to you on this in just a second for a final word, Candace, but there's a bit of breaking news, and that's a large number of police vehicles have been seen in Belfast. Around 20 cars are at a specific site. A crowd is gathered at the site. There appears to be a fire nearby. We'll bring you, of course, the latest on all of that as the show continues right throughout the evening. And just on the England match, which is now postponed, local rules in Orlando apparently state that every time there's a lightning strike, play can't start for at least half an hour. So we know that it'll be at least 9:30 our time, which would be 5 hours prior to that, 4:30 in the afternoon, when the England-Costa Rica match would happen. So we'll bring you the latest on that, but it won't be until at least 9:30 local time in Orlando. Candice, final word on the pensions.
Fine, we can look at it objectively and say it's unsustainable, but I don't like this culture of pointing fingers at older people who've paid off their house. It's, you know, I'll see it on social media, someone can't sell their house, some old widow, and, you know, people just launch abuse at this woman and just, you know, it's like she's some sort of kulak in the Soviet, you know, pre-revolutionary Russia. It's wrong. It's really, really, really wrong. This hatred towards old people really disturbs me.
It's not hatred, it's about fairness. You know, the fact is that people going to work shouldn't be paying to give small fortunes to people that already have a fortune. When we talk about the tax rise, £170 billion is more than we spend on education and policing and home affairs combined. It is an enormous budget.
It is out of control, isn't it, Candice?
Oh, no, I totally agree with that. You can't commit to something like that, especially in the current economic circumstances. But I don't like the finger-pointing and the blame.
They've got their fingers in my bank balance because they keep taking it from people that are trying to build lives, and it's unfair. I think they should do their bit for the country.
But they contributed when we were children.
But let me tell you, the average person who is 75 years old today will receive £300,000 more from the state than they ever paid in. That is a totally farcical situation. Okay. Everyone texting will say that they've paid in what they're taking out. They haven't. It's a myth.
Thank you both very much. Very lively debate desk, and lots to debate as well. Benjamin Butterworth and Candice Holdsworth there. Thank you for that. Just to say that in Northern Ireland, at the Sandy Noise roundabout in Greater Belfast is a very well-known and big roundabout. Protesters have hurled projectiles at officers. A number of protesters dressed in black have been seen throwing projectiles at police in riot gear, and they're gathering at the Chimney Corner Hotel, which is housing asylum seekers. We will have the latest right throughout the programme in terms of exactly what is happening there. But for the meantime, thank you to Benjamin and Candice, and we'll see you both soon, I'm sure. We're going to talk in a second, well, the latest on Belfast, of course, but we're also going to be speaking to, in the next hour, Philip Kisley, the commentator, who's going to tell us about these visa costs and high-skilled foreign workers. Also, John Burrows is the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, one of the main unionist parties. He is not just a leading politician, he's also a former senior police officer in the police service of Northern Ireland. He knows an awful lot about public order. We've actually had him on a number of occasions talking about public order in other parts of the United Kingdom. So given the developing situation in Belfast tonight, it'll be very interesting to hear from John, who actually diffused one of the situations last night where it could have turned violent. Lots more to discuss. Give me a shout. Let me know what you think too.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, things appear to be heating up in Belfast again this evening. We'll be live there throughout the programme. We'll also speak to a public order expert. And within the last few minutes, the Police Service of Northern Ireland have put out a statement about recent disorder in social media users who are posting addresses and details online and sharing through communication apps where migrants are living. We'll talk about all of that in a second with Philip Kistley. And there are other stories as well tonight, including Kemi Badenoch saying that in her belief that there should be more young black men stopped and searched, and we'll talk to Philip about that. We'll also talk about the triple lock pensions debate and the fact that Labour have said they will cover visa costs for high-skilled foreign workers amid unemployment claims. Tell me your thoughts on everything that's happening in Belfast, the immigration aspect of all of this. There's so much to debate this evening. There's so much to talk about. And indeed, what Benjamin was saying, which seemed to upset quite a few of you, I'm sure what his views on pensions and Candace's as well will be triggering a number of people as well. Whatever your thoughts are, let me know. 03444 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or a WhatsApp voice note. Send them through via WhatsApp 03444 499 1000. That's the number for phone calls as well. Stay with me right through till 10 here on the Evening Exchange. And speaking of staying right through till 10, the England football match has been postponed for at least half an hour, the one that is happening in Orlando. So if you're thinking of changing channels at 9 o'clock, it'll be at least 9:30 before that starts because of the lightning in Orlando, just to keep you updated with that. On a much more serious note, the Police Service of Northern Ireland has released a statement in the last few minutes saying we are aware, following recent disorder, some social media users are posting address details online or sharing these through communication apps. Highlighting properties in this way is totally unacceptable. We have received phone calls from a number of families, house owners, neighbours and members of the wider community who are extremely distressed as a result of this reckless activity. This is unacceptable. It is putting lives at risk and has to stop. Anyone who shares personal information online with the intention to endanger others may be committing a criminal offence. Any person who publishes or distributes material which is threatening or abusive may also be committing an offence. We will be investigating any such posts that come to our attention. Well, the Prime Minister's questions today did make a statement about the disorder last night. Everything we're hearing seems to indicate that things are getting more difficult tonight as well. We know that there are specific areas where the police have come under attack and missiles, projectiles have been thrown at them. Let's hear what the Prime Minister said.
People are rightly sickened by the horrific attack on Monday night in North Belfast. As you have just said, the man arrested has been in court in Belfast this morning and charged. I want to thank the Police Service of Northern Ireland and other first responders and members of the public who responded with such bravery. And our thoughts are with the victim. The acts of violence and arson that followed are totally unjustified. This morning I spoke with the First Minister, the Deputy First Minister and the Chief Constable. We are united in calling for calm and determined to restore order, support the police and all those on the front line and ensure that justice is done.
Well, Nigel Farage was asked about this as well at a press conference today. This is what he said.
And is it any surprise that people in Belfast and elsewhere are scared? None of that justifies what was perpetrated by some bad actors last night. There's no doubt about that. There were some very, very bad actors doing bad things. But the vast majority of those people who were out on the streets in Belfast last night were not far right, were not extremists, just really scared about what's going on in their communities and about the lack of government action. There's none.
Nigel Farage there. Let's hear from the Chief Constable of Northern Ireland, John Boucher.
We will be on the streets tonight in numbers even more than we were last night, and we have got arrangements in hand to get mutual aid that will be arriving here tomorrow, and we're looking to get a further some 200 officers to get on the streets to deal with this. These young people who are doing this are changing their own lives for the future. They won't have the opportunities they would otherwise have had. So please, please, please think of that if you know anybody who could be involved in this. And as regards the schools and businesses and people who live in these neighbourhoods that have been affected, I completely understand, having witnessed the events of last night and I was out in Belfast, why people would make that decision. I support
the Chief Constable of Northern Ireland, John Boucher, talking about people who are often not sending their kids to school but to do exams. It's exam season at the moment. There are many others, of course, who are worried about closing businesses, their livelihoods. This is a really tense time in Northern Ireland, and we know that Michelle O'Neill, the First Minister of Northern Ireland, has been responding to this as well. Just listen to the last thing she says here. She really does seem to be tarring quite a few people on the streets, peaceful protesters as well as violent protesters, with the same brush. Maybe you disagree with me, and that's fine. 0344 499 1000. But let's hear from the First Minister of Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill.
People were concerned, people were worried for safety, all very understandable emotions. But what we saw spill onto our streets since Monday night has been nothing short of thuggery. What we saw has been nothing short of racism. We saw youths taken to the streets, young men masked, attacking families, burning them out of their homes, attacking public property, attacking businesses. All we've seen is criminality on our streets and a real, I think, a real attempt to underline racism in our society, which I do not believe is widespread.
Michelle O'Neill there, and just to say that our reporter on the ground, Christian Drogan, is on his way to the roundabout just outside Belfast, and reporters have been chased away from that. We know that the Sandy Knowes roundabout, it's a major roundabout, it's just outside Belfast. I've been round it many, many times myself on my way in and out of Belfast, sort of the northern side of Belfast. Protesters have been hurling projectiles at officers. A number of protesters who are dressed in black have been seen there, police in riot gear there as well. And they've been gathering outside the Chimney Corner Hotel, which is housing asylum seekers. So there's a lot that has happened there. Mary in Cumbria has been in touch and says those families who call for calm are trotting out what's expected of them if Sorry, I'll read that again in a second, but I want to go to Philip Kisley, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. Philip, we are going to talk about visa costs, and that's something I absolutely want your opinion on. But given this developing situation in Belfast, given the words that are used, not just by Keir Starmer, but actually by the First Minister of Northern Ireland as well, this is a very worrying situation, and I wonder if the wrong people are being blamed here.
I think the wrong people are being blamed here. This is, welcome to the future. This is what happens when society fragments. This is what happens when you've had multiculturalism, mass immigration foisted upon you for the last 30 years. It's also what happens, Peter, when you're not allowed to talk about these things. That was real classic example then from the First Minister to, how you make a bad situation 10 times worse. You put everybody together, you tar people with the same brush, you call people who are genuinely, rightly concerned, you call them thugs and racists. That is not going to do any good whatsoever.
I mean, there are some thugs and there are some racists here out there. If people are throwing missiles at police in riot gear, they are thugs and racists, and if they're targeting people, if they're burning people out of their homes because of their ethnicity or their immigration status, that is thuggery and racism. How much do we need to be aware of the wider context of the fact that Alice's mum, Alice we rang in last night, Alice was saying about her 70-year-old mother going out because she's scared about the future. There are an awful lot of people, the majority of people, who aren't thugs and racists, but there are some that are, and we've got to acknowledge that too, Philip, of course, as of course you have.
Yeah, I just have, and nobody wants to see that. Again, they make the situation terrible. They're opportunists, and they just want chaos and anarchy. They are awful. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, but let's talk about the decent people of Belfast who've seen one of their own community have his eye gouged out on the street, okay, who's stabbed with a kitchen knife in a frenzied attack. This is just alien to our culture, and yet we're seeing it all the time. It isn't just this. This is on the back of the Henry Novak debacle as well, where racism was right at the center of that, and we saw how that plays out. We have our police force, we have the judiciary, we have the institutions hamstrung by identity politics. And again, it comes back to this thing, it's yes, this is terrible, but racism, thugs, and all the rest of it. What people need to do is to be able to talk. The reason we're in this terrible situation is that people have not been allowed to express themselves over the last 30 years. When they have seen incidents, when they have seen context, when they have seen things happening that are just fundamentally unfair, when they have seen violence visited on them time and time again, and they are just shut down, not only are they shut down, they are called the perpetrators, then you can understand why people get frustrated. You can understand why people get angry, and you can understand why people are fearful, because there is an epidemic, and it's not just an epidemic of violence, Peter. It's an epidemic of sexual violence as well. I think all of these things come together. It's part of this broader narrative. And because we've not been able to sit down and discuss it like adults in society, we're struggling, because we now live in a sectarian, balkanized society. That's the truth of Britain. And I look at Belfast. I know the history of Belfast. I'm old enough to have seen what happened in the 70s and 80s, for God's sake. It's doubly tragic that it's happening there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We'll return to that story. On our reporter on the ground is on the way to the roundabout where it's happening. He's told us it's really tense, and some reporters have been chased down the road. So we want him, of course, to be safe, and we'll find out what's happening on the ground there in as much as he can tell us as soon as we can get him on the air and as soon as he arrives there. So this is a developing situation in Belfast, the second night of disturbances, and we will bring you live coverage from there as soon as we can. Philip, I wonder if we could talk to you about another story, a big political story about Labour to cover visa costs for high-skilled foreign workers. And this is, of course, as so many people don't have jobs, so many young people, we talked about people not in education, employment or training who can't find a job.
Yeah, it just seems so silly, really, that they would do this. But then again, they just take the easiest way out of everything, don't they? It's tax and spend and bring people in ready-made to do a job. As you say, we've got so many people. It's actually obscene, the numbers of people we have, young people who are neither in education nor in work, who are outside of the system. What we should be doing is not just looking for short-term gain here and short-term answers. We should be looking long. I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it? I'm saying we should be looking long-term when the country's blowing up around my ears. But we should be looking long-term, and we should be looking to train people. We should be looking to give them skills. We should be looking to invest in young people. We should be inculcating, promoting a culture of hard work and reward. That's what it should be about. And this is long-term stuff. What we're suffering from here is our inability, or the inability of successive governments actually, to think beyond the next day. So we need to think about what we want society to look like, how we want culture to work for us. And if we want people to invest in who and what we are as a country, we need to give them something, and we need to value them. And that is the polar opposite of just dragging everybody in on a whim. And obviously, I'm against mass immigration, full stop. I'm not against high-skilled immigration, but we must put our people first, and we must train them up, and we must give them something to aim for. Ambition is what I'm talking about.
Philip, thank you very much. That's Philip Kisley there, who is a senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. What do you make about what he said there? 0344 499 1000. There is some footage emerging of protesters at that roundabout, the Sandy Knowes roundabout just outside Belfast, stockpiling and distributing bricks. We know that there have been some missiles that have been fired at police officers in riot gear, so clearly, and water cannon are being used to attempt to disperse them. That is a big, once the water cannon are used, that is a process. There will be a gold command. The Chief Constable will be involved with that. He'll be out on the ground, but he'll also be in the gold command. There'll be an Assistant Chief Constable who will be in charge of that, and they will be making the decisions. And once you are in a situation where you're using water cannon, that is a certain level that has been breached. In fact, we'll talk about that with John Burrows in a few minutes or so. He is the public order expert, who's also one of the leaders of the Unionist Party, one of the Unionist parties in Northern Ireland. He actually diffused some of the problems last night. I promised I'd come back to this message from Mary in Cumbria. Apologies, I misread it earlier. I'll read it properly now. She says, "Hi Peter, hi Mary. Those families who call for calm are trotting out what's expected of them. If they raised hell, they'd be locked up. We aren't racists, but are fed up of seeing illegals having more rights than us, and everything our ancestors built ruined. Look at Churchill and all our great leaders. He used speeches to rouse this country into action against our enemy, as of all great leaders in times of crisis. I may live in Cumbria, but I'm a fiery Scot and have had to fight the establishment myself. Only my anger at something that happened to my brother's lassie kept our family going, as they all want us to roll over and just take injustice after injustice. I've never been a racist, but I've never felt so much rage at this lily-livered government," says Mary in Cumbria. Well, thank you for that. Paul B, who's a military veteran, former police service in Cornwall, says, "Do please get that spectacled woke male idiot off your show." That was Benjamin Butterworth. Don't worry, he's off it now. He is totally out of touch with the people and is totally anti-reform, and especially anti-Nigel Farage. We the people, your viewers, can see right through him. Thank you, great show, says Paul. Well, Paul, listen, I'm happy to have Benjamin on, and I do like views that aren't necessarily the views that I have, maybe not the views that you have, Paul, as well. Maybe we have slightly different views and things as well, although I do think he was being far too harsh on Nigel Farage, and I did challenge him on a number of occasions on that. Tony's in Milan and says, "I'm not sure Benjamin should be taking a wage as is under false pretences. His statement about people taking 300,000 more than they put in, it isn't pensioners' faults that politicians for years have been inept. Instead of investing national insurance and generating compound interest, they do nothing but pay it out of general taxation." That's always been the case, though, Tony, certainly. "Here's a thought," says Tony. "Start investing it. You'll have to make cuts elsewhere at the outset because current national insurance payments will not be used to pay for benefits, etc., but the economy will be better for it in the long run. Pick non-pension welfare and foreign aid as a starting point." And Margaret in Birmingham says, "Leave the pensioners' triple lock alone. Millions to France for what? Say no more." She also says, "Hello, Peter, 8 years, well done," says Margaret in Birmingham. And that is just a little acknowledgement from Margaret that I'm 8 years off the booze. And that is a very, very kind thing for you to remember and to say, Margaret. And I wish you and indeed your daughter, Lisa, very, very well. And thank you for the birthday card. Lots more to discuss. Stay with us. In fact, birthday cards, plural. Lots more to discuss here on the Evening Exchange. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Varda Calacane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, there are two streams of water cannon being fired now in North Belfast, near the Sandy Knowes roundabout, with those protesters that are near the Chimney Corner Hotel, which is a migrant hotel. They're being fired as bricks fly, flares are lit. This is clearly a developing situation, and we will bring you the latest from it. Our reporter is on the way right now and says it's really tense, and some reporters have actually been chased down the road. There's footage of protesters at the roundabout stockpiling and distributing bricks as well. Matt in Cheshire has been in touch about immigration. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Matt, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, good evening, Peter.
Good evening.
Is it your birthday? Is it?
Sorry? Matt, are you there?
Sorry, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Say that again.
Sorry, is it your birthday today?
No, it was about a week and a half ago.
Oh, right. Sorry, I was going to say many happy
Well,
returns.
you can say that again. That's absolutely fine. No, the thing that's today is I'm 8 years off the booze today, which is calls for even a greater celebration.
I'm 15 years since I've had a drink.
Really?
Yeah, I gave up in my late 30s.
Congratulations. That's brilliant.
I was never a big drinker, but I just gave up because I wanted to. But,
well, good for you. Do you ever feel you want to drink? I dream about it quite a lot, actually.
I do occasionally look at a bottle of Sol or a bottle of like a bottle of Sol with lemon on a cold day, on a hot day. I mean, I could have one and then quite easily not have one for ages if I wanted to.
Yes. No, I know what you mean. Well, listen, well done you, and I think it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I mean, there's nothing about my life that's not better as a result, basically.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
What it was, the government 3.7 billion for deportations earlier on, about 2 hours ago. And I was thinking, they've been using the same, we've deported 60,000 people for over a year now.
Yeah.
Which means they've not deported anybody for over a year.
Well, maybe they've deported more people, they just don't have the figures for it. But it is interesting, they've put out more figures tonight, about 3.7 billion into immigration enforcement over the next 3 years, including in Northern Ireland. It's going to increase by over 20% by 28-29. Nearly 1,000 illegal immigrants have been removed in the last year alone due to across the common travel area. But there is, I mean, if people thought the government had a grip of these things, there would not be peaceful. There might be some protest, but I don't think it would be on the same scale as we've seen.
It's totally it's reactionary gaslighting, Peter. It's just basically because of what's happened in the last 2 days. Considering there are probably over they're estimated between 750,000 and 1.2 million illegal immigrants when Theresa May was Prime Minister. You know, 60,000 is a drop in the ocean. So.
And what do you think about Belfast, Matt? I'm interested in your view on that.
I mean, I'm really torn on that. Obviously, you can't condone what's happening, but those people have been through enough for decades, and then to have this dumped on them. And then Michelle O'Neill is so preposterous. Hilary Benn is preposterous, what he said yesterday.
I find him quite snattery, actually, Hilary Benn. He gave an answer to one of the unionist politicians, a guy called Jim Allister, the other day. It was pretty snattery. And I just think there's not an acknowledgement that this doesn't come from nowhere.
They're just so pious and horrible. It's almost like they don't really genuinely care about any of this stuff. My theory has always been, why would this be happening unless it's happening on purpose?
Matt, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Sorry, nothing is being done to stem it.
Yeah.
So how can you think otherwise?
Matt, listen, thanks for your points. I really appreciate them. Matt in Cheshire there. And disorder has now been reported by police in the northwest of Northern Ireland and Londonderry. This is obviously following the knife attack in North Belfast on Monday night. Police have issued advice for motorists to avoid certain roads and junctions in the city of Londonderry due to items being set alight as well. And we know, of course, that there have been protesters at the Sandy Knowes roundabout in Belfast, stockpiling and distributing bricks, water cannon being fired on them, and there are all sorts of police and riot gear who are trying to contain that situation. We're going to talk to John Burrows, who is an Assembly member. He is the Ulster Unionist leader and an expert on public order, former senior police officer in Northern Ireland. Before that, I want to speak to Darryl in Lincoln, who has some thoughts on what the situation in the country is. Darryl, thanks for the call. What would you like to say?
Oh, hi, Peter. Yeah, good to speak to you again.
You too.
I just find that successive governments for the last 25 years, that not only do they not care about the British people, but they also obviously don't care about legal migrants and genuine asylum seekers, because nobody talks about, genuine migrants, legitimate migrants and genuine legitimate asylum seekers, and how much they're suffering because of what's happening in this country. With this mass illegal, mass migration of unchecked, people coming into the country illegally, and that it's causing a lot of problems for legitimate, legal, genuine, hard-working migrants.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point, Darryl.
Because, as a white British person, you don't know who's a legitimate migrant and who's an illegal migrant, so you kind of view them all with suspicion. And then, if you're a legal migrant, it must be equally frustrating for you to see, all these illegal migrants coming in and
some of the most vociferous calls I have ever got, Darryl, are from legal migrants and are from people who are maybe second generation, who said, hold on a second, we played by the rules, we did everything we had to do, we applied, we paid the money, we did all the stuff about healthcare and all the rest of it. Very good friend of mine who lives in Edinburgh is American. She's paid thousands of pounds for years, as she should, for the NHS before she became, after about 20 years in this country, a naturalised British citizen. She's sworn an oath of allegiance to the Crown and all the rest of it, and is now a British citizen and has a British passport, and I'm very happy with that. She's contributed a huge amount to the economy. She is someone who completely played by the rules and is one of many people I know who are really, really annoyed with people who don't play by the rules.
Yeah, and I mean, I know several people who are, genuine migrants, Asian people, Black African people who I've worked with and who I know, and they're genuinely scared of the situation in this country and what's coming down the, and it's not the fault of the white British people, because they're feeling the same way. Everybody's just on the streets. When I've been to one or two protest marches and things like that, everybody, normal people are just genuinely scared all the time.
A lot of it comes from fear, as you correctly say, Darryl. Listen, thank you for that. I really appreciate that call from Darryl in Lincoln. And Darryl, it's good to talk to you again. In just a second, as this situation develops in Belfast, we're going to speak to a public order expert and politician. He actually diffused some of what could have become even more violent last night in Belfast through his knowledge and community links as well. We'll be talking to him about that. But disorder in Belfast and in Derry, northwest of Northern Ireland, have been reported, and we have a reporter on the scene in Belfast as well. We'll talk to him as soon as we can. John Burrows is next, leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, former top cop in Northern Ireland. He knows an awful lot about public order. He's managed a lot of these things himself. He's been in the command centres. He's been on the ground. We'll talk to him in a second for his expert view and news lines as they're coming into our newsroom in regard to what is happening in Northern Ireland on a second night of violence and disturbances. Stay with us here on Talk and get your view on this on the air by giving me a ring, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots happening in Northern Ireland. Let's hear a voice note from Ian on his view of what's happening.
Now that the situation is growing rather fraught for all the illegal immigrants that have come to this country, whereby their lives could be at risk because of all these violent riots which are being perpetrated by various parties, does this mean that they would have to now flee the country and go to another safe country? Just a point.
Ian, thank you for that. I want to speak now to John Burrows. He is the leader of the Austrian Unionist Party in Northern Ireland. He's a member of the Assembly in Belfast. John is also someone of great standing within the policing community. He's a former senior officer in the police service of Northern Ireland. He knows a heck of a lot about public order. And John, you've been in command when a number of these similar kind of incidents have been happening. We'll talk about that perhaps in a second, but can you just give me your general reaction, first of all, to what has happened in the last few days in Northern Ireland?
Well, good evening, Peter. It's been a very difficult time. We had that horrendous and barbaric attack on an innocent man in North Belfast, and those images have went round, I think, the world of what looked like almost an attempted decapitation. I spoke to the father of the victim today. The victim remains in ICU. He has lost his eyesight, and indeed he is seriously injured in an induced coma. And following that barbaric attack, then we saw disorder in different parts of Northern Ireland last night. East Belfast, Portadown, other areas across Northern Ireland. That took the form of buses being burnt down, houses being burnt, the police being attacked. It really was quite nasty. I was out myself in East Belfast and saw scores of people with masks on, attacking property and expressing what they described as their outrage over the fact that someone from Sudan has ended up in Northern Ireland and then tried to kill one of its citizens. And
you were, of course, observing what was going on there, but you actually diffused the situation, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a GB News crew. We're getting basically ordered out of the area by masked youths. Whenever I turned up, I think people recognised who I was, and I was able to tell people that the free press in this country are not going to be ordered about by yobs. And I was able to use my influence in just speaking to some adults and saying, look, this stuff is crazy. These young people are going to get criminal records. This is not the way to proceed. But look, the police service will, of course, have to investigate the crimes that took place last night. I mean, I've read it that one of those buses that was attacked is worth £700,000 alone. We have people forced out of their homes. We have damage done. Very sinister today. There's been details of HMOs, homes of multiple occupation, addresses put on social media with claims that foreign nationals are in them. And
yeah, the PSNI just put out a statement about that, as I'm sure you're aware, this evening, saying that in itself could be incitement and could be a criminal act by itself. So it's interesting how so much of that seems to be going around social media and indeed WhatsApp groups and so on. We're hearing as well about what's happening in Londonderry and at the Sandy Knowes roundabout, very big, well-known roundabout in Belfast as well. So perhaps the second night of this already starting, John.
Yeah, the difficulty is traditionally the police, say you were policing football in England, or you were policing some other major demonstration, or you were policing paramilitary linked violence in Northern Ireland. Often you have lines of intelligence because you're monitoring those groups. You have perhaps informants in them. You have other ways of knowing what they're doing. With this kind of thing, there's a couple of disadvantages the police had. First of all, yesterday there was no pre-planning for it because this was a spontaneous incident that happened Monday night. Someone from Sudan nearly murdered a citizen here, so there was no planning of an advance nature that you could say we have a policing operation ready for the next day. So there's that issue. And then it's really trying to actually get a handle on this because it's a very diffuse group of people. It's youths and adults from right across the country, and you're chasing your tail really trying to monitor social media. And for example, today there was adverts put out there was going to be a large demonstration outside the City Hall. No such demonstration took place. And the problem is the police service then need to go to that location, have a policing operation in case there's going to be a large protest there. But in fact, that could well just be a distraction and a decoy, because where the protests are tonight is actually a place called Chimney Corner. in Antrim, where there's a large asylum accommodation. So the police have a very difficult job in moving around, trying to actually get a handle on the intelligence. And the second problem is the PSNI has about 6,200 officers. It should have 7,500. It's been massively underfunded and under-resourced.
And just tell us a bit about the challenge that they're having and the choices that they're making. A number of English viewers are saying, well, hold on a second, I didn't think water cannon were actually used in the United Kingdom. You and I both know, you far better than I do, that they are, of course. But there's a certain threshold that has to be reached before those water cannon are used. Isn't that right?
There is. I mean, there's a number of issues. You have about 3 water cannon. You've got to, they take a long time to get into position. So if you've got a very fluid, agile situation, it doesn't particularly help. They are better if you've got a set piece. You know there's going to be an incident next week, an event, you've got a police. Where things move around the country, really it's a moving target. The water cannon can be challenging. There is a threshold to use the water cannon. It is very effective. We do have other tactical options that aren't used often in England and Wales. So, for example, baton rounds, where you can fire
what people might know as plastic bullets.
Yes, what used to be plastic bullets. Now, a lot of science has went into this. In fact, my father was heavily involved in it, where the plastic baton round, which did kill some people in the past in Northern Ireland, it is it's what's called a less lethal option. So if the police are in a position whereby you've rioters who are literally going to kill them or kill someone else, you fire that instead of firing live rounds. But what we have now, the type of baton round has been developed with medics and scientists, so it is far safer than it used to be. So that is an option. But the police, of course, are bound by rules of proportionality and a reasonable use of force. But look, this is a challenging situation for the police because they're under-resourced. The intelligence picture is patchy. You're trying to get most of your intelligence off social media, of which it's a patchwork quilt of false information, misinformation, and disinformation.
I just want to ask a question about leadership, John, because I know there's been a lot of uniting from political leaders in Northern Ireland of the condemnation of what happened on Monday night, and of course there are active court proceedings about that, and we'll be careful what we say. But nonetheless, there's an interesting comment that a DUP politician I spoke to earlier on took issue with about what Michelle O'Neill said today, the First Minister of Northern Ireland from Sinn Féin is her party. Let's just play that clip and then perhaps I'll get your reaction to that, John. Can we hear from Michelle O'Neill?
People were concerned, people were worried for safety, all very understandable emotions. But what we saw spill onto our streets since Monday night has been nothing short of thuggery. What we saw has been nothing short of racism. We saw youths taken to the streets, young men masked, attacking families, burning them out of their homes, attacking public property, attacking businesses. All we've seen is criminality on our streets and a real attempt to underline racism in our society, which I do not believe is widespread.
What do you make of those comments? Because, I mean, there's no doubt that there has been thuggery and racism, I'm not saying that for a second, but can we separate the peaceful protesters from those who are breaking the law, John?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, there's a number of issues that I think politicians here fail to grasp, quite like is happened throughout the United Kingdom. It is entirely possible to have a concern about how migration is managed in any society, concern about how the movement of people can come through your borders without you knowing exactly who they are, the inability to deport people after they commit serious crime because of the endless activist lawyers who instigate human rights abuse arguments. So that is a genuine frustration. Now, what we should do is separate that then from talking about lawful migration, which Northern Ireland, like many other parts of the United Kingdom, relies upon for its NHS, for many of its factories, for its businesses and skills. And then finally, what we need to say is that there is, that violence is never right. But people do have a right to have a peaceful protest, to say that we are not happy with the way migration is managed, that we're not happy with the fact that there seems to be a common travel area that can be exploited. But of course, that needs to be separated from those who are engaged in violence. And I think the politicians need to disaggregate that. I think some of our problems here in Northern Ireland, Peter, has been that either people use really inflammatory language, or you have those on the other side of politics who don't want to deal with the issue of migration. They simply don't want to have a conversation. And within that vacuum, actually, you then have the violence.
Really, really good point there. John, listen, thank you. John Burrows there is the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party in Northern Ireland. He's also a public order expert, having been a senior officer in the police service there previously. Christian is with us again, our reporter on the ground. Christian, you're near those water cannon. I can see that there is a flaming mass behind you as well. What's going on? Tell us the latest.
Yeah, so it's really kicking off now, Peter. So there's 2 water cannons in operation. There's one behind me and there's one in front of me. I think they're going to swap over. They've already swapped over once, which I assume means one of them has already done a full tank of water. The fire brigade are on the way down, and there's more police riot vans than you can shake a stick at, to be honest.
Where exactly are you and what is happening there? Just tell us about the protesters versus the police.
So we're at Sandy Nose roundabout, and the police are basically pushing the protesters right back with the water cannon. So yeah, that's what's happening. There's rocks. I'm having to just keep checking because there are rocks flying over. And yeah, there's some quite intense clashes now, to be honest, between the police and the rioters. There's lots of people out watching as well. And yeah, like I say, I can just see, as far as I can see, the sort of police Land Rover type riot vans just lined up down the road. And yeah, obviously there's fires going off everywhere. It's moved down away from the migrant hotel now, and this seems to be the epicenter of the.
Are the police pushing the protesters away from the migrant hotel? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so I think this started off because there was a big group of people heading up towards the migrant hotel, and yeah, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. They're being pushed back, and I think it's containing itself, if you like, because it's keeping the protesters occupied. Obviously, with having some activity with the police. I don't know the area, so I don't know what is at the end of the road and where they're being pushed back to. But we are on the. Being pushed back by the police now. We're at the sort of, it's Sandy Nose roundabout, and
yeah, that's obviously major interchange outside. Just on the north tip of Belfast, coming into the kind of M2 up the north coast there, and so on, up to Antrim and so on. Many people might have gone up there if they have visited the Giant's Causeway and so on. Christian, stay safe. We will talk to you perhaps later in the programme. Christian Drogan there from Watchman UK. Lots to discuss in all of that disorder reported by the police in Londonderry as well, the second city in Northern Ireland, and we will talk more about that. This is, of course, all stems from that knife attack in North Belfast on Monday night. Police issuing advice for motorists to avoid certain areas as well. And at that roundabout, there were reports earlier of people stockpiling various things like bricks and distributing bricks as well. Bricks have been thrown at police as well as flares have been lit and so on. So there's an awful lot going on there as well. We'll talk more about that throughout the programme. We'll bring you as up to date as we can. We'll go talk to Christian again before the end of the programme. And we will talk about other major stories of the day. We'll get your views on all of this, 0344 499 1000. We'll also talk about something else you really want to talk about, which is this think tank, the Resolution Foundation, formerly headed by the Pensions Minister, Torsten Bell. He de-poshified his name from Torsten Hendrickson Bell. And we're going to be talking about whether we should scrap the triple lock, because pensions are, that is what that foundation thinks. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
first moved in.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
I've got some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030. After the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the...
Across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's talk about the pensions triple lock. The Resolution Foundation, which is a left-wing think tank formerly headed by the pensions minister, has said that the triple lock should be scrapped. Joe Michelle is a professor of economics at the University of West England. Joe, very good to talk to you. What do you make of this? Because I don't know about you, but there are loads of people, usually former politicians, see if it's not actually needing people's votes. For example, the former Chancellor, who say, oh yeah, let's get rid of the triple lock, but show me the serving politician who will say the same, Joe. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a political hot potato for sure. It's not a popular one. I'm a bit taken aback by the Resolution Foundation proposal because it doesn't amount to very much. When you read the small print, what they're talking about, it would affect the state pension by about £1 a week. So you're looking at the difference between £199 a week or £200 a week, and it could save about £600 million, which sounds like a lot, but in sort of public finance terms, you know, government spending terms, is a tiny amount of money. There's a sensible argument in their proposal, which is that at the moment you can't predict how much the pension is going to go up by because it depends on inflation, it depends on wage increases, and it has a minimum of 2.5%. So, for example, during the pandemic, they actually suspended the wage earnings inflation bit because there would have been such a large jump in the pension. So I think there is a sensible bit, which is that this unpredictability isn't really good for anybody. It means the government doesn't know how much it'll be spending. It means that pensioners don't know how much they'll be earning. But the proposed replacement doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I think the big question is here really, do we think that pensioners' incomes should be rising faster than everybody else's incomes? And I actually think the answer is probably yes, because our pension is relatively ungenerous if you compare it to other relatively
But the point made by one of my guests earlier on is that people always say it's just the money they've put in. But he was talking about a tweet from Sir Edward Lee, the father of the House, the oldest, well, the longest-serving MP, who said that of people born in the year that he was born, which is presumably in the 40s, they would get an average of £300,000 more out of their pension than they put in. I mean, that's an incredible rate of interest were you to put that in the in a bank account.
Yes, but the pension doesn't work like a bank account. It really isn't a situation where you're sort of putting money away and it gets locked away, earns interest and gets paid back. What's happening is current working people, myself, yourself, a share of what we're paying in tax goes to keep pensioners afloat, pay for their food, housing and shelter. And that just sort of shuffles up as everybody gets older. So I think it's better to think of it in those terms. Effectively, it's a transfer from taxpayers now to pensioners, and the question is, how much do we think that should be? And that's a political question. Where do we think pensioners should come? At the moment, it's about 30% of median earnings, and then the question is, you know, should that keep going up? Should it get to 35? Should it get to 40? And that's ultimately a political question. It's not an economics question. My own personal view, as a sort of citizen rather than an economist, is we've got a relatively ungenerous pension and it probably should keep going up. But there is a limit. I mean, I think politicians should be honest and they should say this is our target, a bit like the minimum wage. There's a target for where the minimum wage is trying to get to as a share of average earnings. And I think the pension is the same. And then there's the question of how do you get there? Is the triple lock the best way to get there? And maybe it's not.
And is it fair, do you think? Is the triple lock a fair thing?
I think what the triple lock does is it means that pensioners' income rises faster than everybody else's. So that's a big question. Is that fair? I mean,
well, what do you think? Is it or is it not?
I think that it's probably unfair that children in poverty remain in poverty while everybody else's incomes, or many other people's incomes, are increasing. But I'm not sure that the way to solve children being in poverty is to push more pensioners into poverty. I think there's money elsewhere that we can use for both effectively. So I think if you take away the triple lock, and the Resolution Foundation replaces it with something pretty similar. As I said, the difference, I think by 2030 is £1 a week on the state pension. So it's not a big difference. But I do think we should keep something in place, which means that pensioners' incomes increase over time and increase by more than average wages, for example, because they're relatively low. They're a relatively under compensated group. But I do think we've got to do something about all the other unfairness in our society as well, that the children in poverty, the underfunded health service, the problems with the social care system, all of that stuff. We've got a lot of unfairness and inequality, but I don't think pensioners should be the first place we look to try and overcome that.
OK, Joe, thank you. Joe Michel there, who is a Professor of Economics at the University of West England. What do you think of what he said? 0344 499 1000. Lots of people want to get on the air tonight, and please do keep calling. We'll get as many of you as we can between now and 10 o'clock. Adam is in Birmingham and wants to talk about Keir Starmer. Adam, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hi there.
Hi.
My view, just in regards to the Belfast incident, is in regards to Keir Starmer, firstly, he's showing incredibly weak leadership over Belfast. In my view, the actual solution is, well, there's two. First one is implementing stricter asylum checks, and secondly, empowering the police to be brutally tough on crime. Right now, our streets feel lawless because our police are completely paralysed. They're completely terrified of the optics, completely terrified of being called racist. And because of that fear, they are second-guessing themselves instead of actually doing the job and clearing the streets. So, you know, burning our own communities and attacking immigrants is not actually the solution. I think we actually need stricter asylum vetting. We can't just grant leave to remain to anyone who crosses the border. So, you know, we need to actually go down and actually fix the root cause, which is the broken system. And then alongside that, if we want safer streets, we need to let the police enforce the law. We need frontline officers who are backed up by the government to smash down on violent criminals and rioters alike without any fear of political correctness holding them back.
Okay. Adam, do you mind me asking how you would identify yourself, what your community is? You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. I'm just interested.
No, I can. So, yeah, so I'm from Birmingham. So I'm from the Asian background. So my heritage is Asian.
Does this kind of thing make it more difficult for people like you?
I would say it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't. It makes it difficult in the sense that it brands everyone under the same umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, like yesterday when Kami Badenoch gave her speech and she was talking about the stop and searches, I agree with her principle that in order to tackle knife crime, we do need to, you know, increase the amount of stop and searches. But when she made the comment about it doesn't make a difference, you know, how many black people you search, I think that's where the problem lies, because then genuine people that want to come forward and help with this sort of issue, but they'll all get branded under the same umbrella, and you're going to start alienating them. So I know people who actually want to step forward and help the community, and they have done. But when you just, you know, use that sort of rhetoric, then you start to push away the actual people that want to support and actually want to come forward. So, you know, there is a problem.
So do you think, I mean, we're actually, believe it or not, by coincidence, we're talking about Kemi Badenoch after the news on that exact topic. So do you think she went too far in what she said? What do you think she could have said that would have been better and more encouraging to people to help the police and so on?
So I'd say, like I said, I think her intention was right. We do need to be, you know, quite thorough in our stop and searches. You know, if a certain demographic has a high amount of certain crime and it links to our demographic, it's understandable. You want to increase the frequency, but then at the same time, you don't want to take it that far ahead where you start using words like it doesn't make a difference how many black boys you search, because then
is that too casual? Was she perhaps too casual in what she was saying?
Yeah, 100%. Just because she's from the Black African descent, in her mind she might think it's fine. I can say that, but you can't, because when you're in a position of power, obviously words have consequences. Within the sort of, I do a lot of community work, and people have always shared that view that, we need to be tough on crime. And if there is a certain community that has high proportional levels of crimes, feel free to go after them. We shouldn't really be, taking a step backwards just because of the fear of being called racist. But then at the same time, you want these people on board and actually want to help you, so you can't alienate them. So I think that you can't be that casual in your language. You need to actually put your arm around the people that are willing to help and then get them involved, because people do want to help. I'm from Birmingham, so in the inner city areas, knife crime is just ridiculously high. And there is, individuals from certain demographics that commit that level of crime. So I'm more for it. I'm like, fly tipping is on the high. It's a mess. Knife crime is on the high. So I'll be at the front line and say, clear up the streets. But then when I'm putting myself forward, and if I get branded under the same sort of rhetoric, then it kind of makes me think, well, hang on, like, I'm trying to help you. So
why would I bother? Yeah,
exactly.
That makes right. You've made so much sense in those comments, Adam. We've got to leave it because I've got to go to the news. But listen, I really, really appreciate your call. Really interesting thoughts on so many different aspects there. It's really going to make me think. And we're going to debate this with Chris Rose in a second, and also get the latest from Belfast. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A second night of violence in Belfast and other parts of Northern Ireland, including Londonderry as well. We'll bring you the latest from the scene very, very soon here on Talk. Your reaction to that and the causes of what's happening and the wider conversation that we're having on this station, but others are saying don't have it. The First Minister of Northern Ireland has made some comments this evening that have been criticised by a number of people. We'll remind you of those in just a second. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. We're also going to talk about what's happening with black boys and what Kemi Badenoch has said. We'll speak to Chris Rose about that. Kemi Badenoch said we need to stop and search more black boys. Is that a reasonable thing to say? We heard from Adam in Birmingham just a second ago saying that he thought that actually those words were a bit clumsy. Lots to discuss. As I say, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note or give me a ring, all on the main number, 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss here on Talk between now and 10. We'll return to Belfast at least twice between now and then, if not three times, with crowds are gathering for a second night. They've been seen throwing projectiles at police in Belfast, and right now water cannon are being used to disperse those crowds by police officers in Belfast. So much to discuss. Stay with us here on Talk. Quite a number of people getting in touch about pensions as well. Betty says, so easy to fix the UK pensions and benefit crises. Labour have a majority. Anyone 50 and over, no change. Anyone below, all your national insurance goes to a personal pot backed by Sovereign Wealth Fund from new oil and gas licences. Every child gets an account from birth with their national insurance, and the child benefit goes in there for them, not paid in, and you don't get paid out. Betty, really interesting thoughts on that. Dawn in Chelmsford says, I guess the triple lock could be frozen for any pensioner with a private pension and paying the higher rate tax. They clawed back the winter fuel allowance from wealthy pensioners. Another person, Neil, says, I very rarely agree with Benjamin Butterworth, who was on earlier on, caused a bit of a storm when he did, but he is absolutely right with regard to the triple lock. Rich old folk like me are exploiting our young people. Joel says, I don't buy the hype and all this intentional they wanted to kick off in the streets, because once again it's another reason to introduce digital ID and have everyone chipped and mandated orally. I don't think that's going to happen, Joel. The forces that want this pushed through are so powerful they've engaged in pushing illegal immigration, creating scam damage and weather warfare, hopes man-made climate change. I mean, Joel, I just don't think any of that's true, quite frankly, but I am worried about digital ID and don't want it, so I respectfully disagree with you, but nonetheless thank you for your message. On what's happening in Belfast right now, those water cannon are being used to try to disperse protesters. The Prime Minister has been talking about this today at Prime Minister's Question Time. This is what Keir Starmer said.
People are rightly sickened by the horrific attack on Monday night in North Belfast. As you have just said, the man arrested has been in court in Belfast this morning and charged. I want to thank the Police Service of Northern Ireland and other first responders and members of the public who responded with such bravery. And our thoughts are with the victim. The acts of violence and arson that followed are totally unjustified. This morning I spoke with the First Minister, the Deputy First Minister and the Chief Constable. We are united in calling for calm and determined to restore order, support the police and all those on the front line, and ensure that justice is done.
The Prime Minister speaking at Prime Minister's Questions, and as you may know, Julia Hartley-Brewer obviously on air every Wednesday, every Monday to Thursday actually, between 10 and 1, and when Prime Minister's Questions is on almost every week, I'm in the studio with Julia evaluating what the Prime Minister says, so do join us on Wednesdays between 12 and 12:30. Nigel Farage has been quizzed about this. He was at a press conference in Makerfield. This is what he said.
And is it any surprise that people in Belfast and elsewhere are scared? None of that justifies what was perpetrated by some bad actors last night. There's no doubt about that. There were some very, very bad actors doing bad things, but the vast majority of those people who were out on the streets in Belfast last night were not far right, were not extremists, just really scared about what's going on in their communities and about the lack of government action. There's none.
The Chief Constable of Northern Ireland, John Boucher, has been giving a warning to people as well, especially people who are on the streets right now. There are many hundreds of officers who are trying to push them back. We're going to bring you the very latest from Belfast at various points throughout the next hour. This is what the Chief Constable, John Boucher, said earlier.
We will be on the streets tonight in numbers even more than we were last night, and we have got arrangements in hand to get mutual aid that will be arriving here tomorrow. And we're looking to get a further some 200 officers to get on the streets to deal with this. These young people who are doing this are changing their own lives for the future. They won't have the opportunities they would otherwise have had. So please, please, please think of that if you know anybody who could be involved in this. And as regards to schools and businesses and people who live in these neighbourhoods that have been affected, I completely understand, having witnessed the events of last night and I was out in Belfast, why people would make that decision. I support...
That is the Chief Constable of Northern Ireland, John Boucher. Well, Michelle O'Neill is the First Minister of Northern Ireland. This is what she has said today.
People were concerned, people were worried for safety, all very understandable emotions. But what we saw spill onto our streets since Monday night has been nothing short of thuggery. What we saw has been nothing short of racism. We saw youths taken to the streets, young men masked, attacking families, burning them out of their homes, attacking public property, attacking businesses. All we've seen is criminality on our streets and a real, I think, a real attempt to underline racism in our society, which I do not believe is widespread.
Disorder has also been reported in Londonderry, and this is the second night of disturbances at various points in Northern Ireland following that knife attack in North Belfast, that attempted beheading. There was a hearing in the Belfast Magistrates Court today, and a 30-year-old man of Sudanese origin has been remanded in custody, and he will there will be further court action in about 4 weeks' time. Let me just find the detail on that. Hadi Al-Aladid, who's 30, is accused of attempted murder, possessing a knife and threatening to kill an NHS radiographer on the same day. He appeared at Laganside Magistrates Court today, Belfast Magistrates Court, where he was remanded into custody. The alleged attacker came to the UK using an asylum loophole. He's believed to have travelled from Sudan to Paris and then to Dublin before taking a bus to Belfast in February 2023. Claimed asylum, was given leave to remain in September that year. We have a reporter on the ground we're going to speak to you a little bit later on. We've heard and seen various things about stockpiling bricks, protesters attacking police, flares being lit, and indeed water cannon being used. Clearly a very tense situation, and we will return to it throughout this hour. We're going to speak to the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph a little bit later on in the programme as well, John Laverty. So we will keep you fully abreast of exactly what is happening in Belfast. I want to talk about another story now, and that is Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, in regard to what she has said about stop and search. We need to stop and search more black boys. That is what she has said. Let's just see a clip of her speech on this.
The reason why we want to triple stop and search and hire 10,000 more police officers is because we believe that this will lead to safer streets. I'm afraid it doesn't matter if more black boys are searched, because it will mean more black lives are saved.
Chris Rose is a political commentator and joins me now. Chris, you're very welcome to the programme, and thank you. What do you think about stop and search saving black lives and indeed all lives? Because that is something that Kemi Badenoch has been talking about. We had a caller actually a few minutes ago who was saying that she was perhaps a bit casual in her language. What do you think?
I fully agree with any intentions to increase stop and search to save black lives, because when we look at the statistics, black boys are 7 times more likely to be killed by another black person. I mean, that is shockingly high. So it does make sense to target and stop and search areas where knife crime is rampant amongst black gangs, to make sure that we are saving black lives as well. And I do think there should be less emphasis on, saying, oh, the police are racist, because they're not. If they're saving black lives, then people who support these Black Lives Matter groups should be all for it, but these are the type of people who actually oppose them. And, we shouldn't be targeting them as racists, because it can cost lives. I mean, when we look at the Manchester Arena bombing, someone reported the culprits, but they said, oh, we don't want to take any action because we don't want to be called racist, but in the end, they should have taken the appropriate action. When we look at Southport, the person who was reported to prevent and other authorities didn't take any action because they didn't want to be called racist. So this kind of targeting of calling institutions racist is actually ironically killing minorities in the end, because it could be saving lives and could be saving other lives as well.
Are we too reticent to talk about it, to even have the conversation? Kemi Badenoch, being leader of the Conservative Party, whether we like it or not, is someone who has perhaps more of an opportunity to talk about these issues than maybe a white man would have if, for example, Brandon Lewis was the leader of the Conservative Party, or David Cameron, or Boris Johnson. She has an opportunity to talk about these. She's taken these things in a slightly different way and be taken, and the reception to be different. Are we too reticent to talk about this? Are there leaders who are too reticent to talk about this for fear of being branded racist? And should they have that fear?
It does seem the case that some leaders who had in the past are certainly more afraid to talk about it because they don't want to be called racist, but we absolutely should be talking about it, and I encourage any white politician to be talking about it as well, because it is very important. We get down on crime, because if we have a rampant knife crime epidemic that continues across London and other places, then it makes our society look like a low-trust society, because if crime is so rampant, then who wants to live in these areas? Who wants to visit them? They basically become a no-go zone as well. And, they can't really say, oh, we'll get on top of, looking after minorities if they continue to ignore the main biggest killer, which is, killing black boys, which is knife crime. So I think people need to put away their, feelings of saying, oh, it's institutional racist, because it's not at all. Mm-hmm. It's got to be done, and I fully support any measures to increase stop and search, because it's just common sense. And, Sadiq Khan, way back in 2016, said that he was against stop and search. He didn't want to do it. But then as soon as knife crime increased rapidly, people have called for it to be more introduced and more increased over the years. And I think to myself, it's more important to save black lives than to put your ideology above it, because if your ideology results in more lives being lost to knife crime, then your ideology is wrong, frankly.
Chris, thank you. Really good to talk to you on this. Chris Rose there, he's a political commentator on Kemi Badenoch's comments that we need to stop and search more black boys. He certainly agrees with her. And Zarina has been in touch and says, finally, Peter, Kemi Badenoch is speaking my language. We have to ignore colour and concentrate on crime. Steve says the only way to sort out the migrant problem peacefully is by a national strike to bring this government down. For too long now, governments have been playing Russian roulette with the people of this country. And on pensions, many people want to get in on that. Gary's been in touch and says, I doubt the savings for the government from abandoning the triple lock will be anything like what some of these so-called experts are estimating it to be, because I think they're forgetting that roughly 2/3 of state pensioners pay income tax due to the fact that they have other sources of income, like occupational pensions. For example, I pay tax at 40% on my state pension, so out of my rise of around £11 a week that I got in April, I didn't see almost a fiver of that, because that is what the Treasury took in income tax. Very interesting on that, Gary, and thanks for your messages. We're going to go back to the phones, and we hope to speak to our reporter in Belfast. Obviously, it's a dynamic situation. He's moving around. Those water cannon are being deployed right now, and for him to safely report to us is a bit of a movable feast. So as soon as he can come back to us and get back on the air, we will speak to Christian, but we're keeping a very close eye on what is happening in Belfast and Londonderry as well. We'll also speak to the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph, John Laverty, in about 10 minutes' time too. But I want to make sure that I get as many calls, text, tweets and voice notes on the air this evening on whatever topic you want to talk about. 0344 499 1000.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, and thank you to all the texters and tweeters. Les says, why do police still use water cannon in Northern Ireland, whereas in London many more nasty marches sold their water cannon? That's right, Boris Johnson bought them and then didn't use them. They're probably in a museum somewhere. Double standard, says Les. Maybe Northern Ireland folk are just tougher. Another person says, triple lock again, get rid of the illegals who've never paid in enough. Another person says, I'm a widow. Oh, sorry, the same person actually, Rotten Lass, says, I'm a widow of 70 years old. I've paid into the tax and national insurance system for over 50 years. My monthly pension is £1,120. I paid for Benjamin Butterworth's education, such as it appears to be. Eye rolling emoji. Perhaps he would prefer me to die. Happy to oblige. I hope that is okay. William says, if all these rioters are really extreme right-wingers, why do they wait until there's an atrocity before rioting? They would riot all the time. Just ask Benjamin that one. Nick says, why does Nigel Farage live rent-free in the heads of those on the left? I've heard Benjamin Butterworth mention his name every third word, talking about Benjamin, who was on earlier on. Lots of people getting in touch, including Jenny in Hampshire, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Jenny, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I think our biggest problem is the fact that we've got a rotten government, and the root of it is Keir Starmer is anti-British, he's anti-white, and that's our biggest problem.
You think the Prime Minister is anti-British?
Yes, I do. Very anti-British.
Why do you think that?
Because he seems to knock everything that the British do. He doesn't ever praise the British. He's not that sort of person. I don't know, basically I think he's a liar, to be quite honest. I mean, not a very nice word to use, but he is. And so... it's
nicer than many of the words people use about him.
The Labour Party are rotten to the core, and the guy you had on earlier, Benjamin
Butterworth, yeah.
Yes, he always comes up with the same thing. The left are so ignorant, and they rant. They don't just talk, they rant, and they're right. And everything they say is right. And everything's far right. They don't ever just say people on the right or the middle. It's far right. They have no idea, and they do not want to stop migrants coming into this country. And when Benjamin said about the triple lock and people like, and then things like that, what about the millions or billions, I should say, we are wasting on people that come here illegally, and we give them everything. But what they're doing, what this Labour Party is doing, they will give it to them, but take it off the indigenous people of this country. That is so wrong, which makes them racist.
Jenny, there's a lot in that, and I think a lot of people are going to agree with what you have to say. I really appreciate the call and just many, many aspects of that. on pensions as well, Trevor's been in touch from Manchester and says, does a rich person deserve a state pension? Of course they do, just as much as I do, and I am far from rich. David says Kemi Badenoch didn't just need to use the black word at all. Checkpoints for all, increase, stop and search, use common sense, select at random, select at suspicion, select a white boy carrying for his black friend. So what? Just stop and search. It is that easy. Just do it. Kemi should not even be across from the dispatch box. Nigel should. What a shambles the Tories have left. Have we forgotten so quickly, says David in London. Thank you, talk. Let's speak to Adam in Essex. He has some thoughts on Belfast. Adam, you're very welcome. What would you like to say?
At the end of the day, when you've got 40, 50 or 100 youths or whatever, or individuals coming down your street and throwing Molotov cocktails at your homes, what are the individuals doing to sort of defend themselves?
Well, I mean, you probably can't defend yourself, and there are 27 people.
What is an Englishman's home right classed as? His castle, isn't it?
That's right. And I mean, there are 27 people this evening who don't have homes because they've been put out of their homes because of violent thugs last night.
How would you defend your home, right? Yeah, if 50 youths, right? Yeah, or 50
I don't know, Adam.
Down.
I don't know.
Well, I'd like you to sort of tell me if you were in that situation, if you were living in one of the...
I'd be really scared. It would be dreadful. I totally condemn it. It's an awful, totally inexcusable thing and absolutely should not happen.
But how would you defend it?
I don't know, Adam. I would probably ring the police.
Yes, the police have been out there in force. They've stood by, right, yeah, yesterday, and today, right, yeah, they're actually doing something about it.
Yeah, when you see those water cannon working, is that the right approach, do you think?
I think those water cannons should have dyes in them. Where, right, yeah, the dye is actually... the water cannons have dye in them, the water.
Yes.
And they should be actually... what's the word I'm looking for? The individuals that are involved in whatever, they should be dyed.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and that has happened, and people have had that purple dye on them and so on, and that has meant that they can be tracked down and justice can be served.
Exactly, it's a simple solution, right? Yeah, right? Yeah, but I would, right? Yeah, if somebody came down along my home and whatever with a Molotov cocktail, now I'm living in my home with my family, with children and parents or grandparents or whatever, and I feared for the safety of my life, I would retaliate, by the way.
Okay, well, we cannot... Okay, Adam, we cannot advocate any violence whatsoever, and I'm sure you wouldn't, and I hope you're never in that situation, and those families should be protected by the forces of law and order, and if they're not protected by the forces of law and order, that is totally wrong. Thank you for your call, Adam. I want to go back to Belfast. This is Christian Drogan, a reporter for Watchman UK. Christian, just give us the latest on what's happening.
Yeah, so the water cannons are in full force down the bottom end of the road. You can probably just see behind me. The police lines have moved down. I think they're trying to push them back even further now. They're sort of rioters. There's still missiles going, and the police, as you can see, stood behind me. Very calm, to be honest. There's no screaming and shouting, as we've seen with the police back home in England. But yeah, it's been pushed back. We've also been pushed back this way. We created a bit of a safe zone for the police to operate in. So, yeah, that's what we're up to.
And there's clearly a huge police presence. Do you sense that the police are in control here?
I'd probably go 50-50 if I was being fair. I just spoke to some residents down there. They said to me, yeah, this is our homes that's being destroyed and that sort of thing. No migrants live down here. We've just had to stop some rioters going into a 70-year-old woman's house. Now, I think the emotions are just getting the better of people, to be honest. And obviously, we do not condone violence at all. Peaceful protesting, which is where we were before up at Migrant Hotel. That was very peaceful. But obviously down here it has spilled over.
There are some bins on fire in other parts of Belfast as well. Christian, I just wonder where these missiles are coming from. We hear they've been sort of stockpiling bricks and so on. Are they just taking whatever they can find and throwing them at police, as they often do at these situations in Northern Ireland?
Down this road, it's wave goodbye to your garden wall, really. And if you've got a timber fence, then it's probably being used as bonfire right now. That's about as blunt as it can be. That's what's happening down there. And the water cannon is just firing at the people. There wasn't a warning given before, a one-time warning. It was quite harrowing, really. It was, this is your only warning. If you don't push back now and the crowd doesn't disperse, we will use the water cannon. And then a couple of minutes after, as the first missile came, the water cannon started back up. But the water cannons are being cycled. There's two, and they did try to link it up to the mains so they could have a constant feed, but they weren't able to get enough water from that. So they're cycling the two water cannons in, one's topping up as the other one's sort of pushing back the crowd.
Christian, thank you for that. That's Christian Drogan there, reporter from Watchman UK. We'll speak to Christian again before the end of the programme. We're here right until 10 o'clock, of course, as we are every night this week. John Laverty is the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph. He's going to join us in a second. There's been a lot of political reaction to this on both sides of the Irish Sea, and indeed from our viewers and listeners, both in this country and throughout the world. 0344 499 1000 to get your call on the air between now and 10. Plenty of time to do that. We'll speak to John Laverty next. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who's been in touch. We will get to more of your calls, text, tweets and voice notes in the next half an hour. But I want to speak to John Laverty now. John is the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph. John, thank you for your time this evening. Can you just give us your impressions of what's been happening? It's been a very dramatic few days for Northern Ireland for reasons that have been pretty, the rioting, I've reported a lot of it on the streets of Belfast over my career at UTV and other places as well. But there have been the reasons for it and the thoughts that are going through those people's heads are very different from the sectarian violence of previously. Just tell us your impressions of what's been happening, especially as that violence continues this evening.
Yeah, Peter, well, as you know, Northern Ireland is no stranger to violence on the streets. But this is different because in the past we've fought against each other, so to speak, but this is somebody who caused by an alarming incident which involves someone who isn't from here, and that has brought people out onto the streets. It's brought up obviously the race issue, and it's people going the only way they feel they can go is onto the streets to demonstrate against what was an absolutely horrific attack the other night, Monday night.
It's interesting, John, certainly that we've seen a lot of political unity at the start of the week. That seems to be fraying to some degree. I was chatting to Philip Brett earlier on and John Burrows, the DUP politician and Ulster Unionist Party politician respectively, throughout this programme. There do seem to be some criticism of some of their reaction here. I just wonder what your sense of that and how the Belfast Telegraph is covering that.
Well, the way I've seen it since Tuesday morning has been, first of all, there were too many politicians, I think, who were demanding that it goes out into the open about what the background of the attacker.
The suspected attacker, obviously.
The suspected attacker. That was what was going on Tuesday morning from various politicians, and they finally got their way. And the background of the alleged attacker was put out in the public eye. Then, of course, as what always happens in Northern Ireland, the politicians who were desperate to see this, desperate to have the outrage, are now, of course, today criticising the violence that happened on the streets. Now, everybody knows that in Northern Ireland, you really have to be very, very careful with what you say, and especially with an incident like this, because it became a worldwide issue because of the video. It was the tinder box was already lit.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where the excuse, the reason is there. There was always going to be protests about this, and inevitably there was going to be violence. Thankfully, although some of the pictures are coming in, it's not as bad tonight. I mean, I'm talking to you from just off the Newton Road where I live, and it's definitely a lot quieter than the mayhem of last night.
And that's just for our viewers and listeners who don't know, that's East Belfast, where that bus was burned last night. £700,000 bus was burned. Clearly, what's been happening at the Sandy Knowes roundabout, which is a few miles away from where you are, is very concerning, but just not, as you say, to the same degree. We've heard of disturbances in Londonderry as well, but is it just limited to those two places, to Belfast and Derry?
At the minute, the area that you're seeing now in some of these pictures is obviously up in Glengormley, where there is a hotel which houses quite a few migrants. Now, obviously, as people have probably seen already, there's been a lot of the police have been there with water cannons. There's been quite a few youths, throwing bottles and stones at the police. I mean, it's clearly under control from the police. They say they've been using the water cannon, and it looks bad, but it's not as bad as anywhere near as bad as last night. There isn't as much intimidation. What they are doing is obviously they're targeting at the minute the hotel in Glengormley where the various migrants are staying. So we're watching that, and obviously it's still pretty early, but
yes,
I think we can safely say it's not going to be as bad as last night, which was quite horrific. And it reminded me, I was only 6 or 7 at the time, but it reminded me of the people who were being burned out of their houses in 1969 as the Troubles.
Yes, Bombay Street in West Belfast and places like that. I remember doing a documentary about that for the 40th anniversary. So it's some of the depressingly similar scenes, isn't it? Yeah,
it looks very similar to that, and it's the same thing. It's intimidation. It's burning people out of their houses. Only this time it's racism inspired rather than sectarian, which of course Northern Ireland's been dogged with for the last 40 or 50 years.
Is there an understanding, John? I just wonder about some of the people who have been peacefully protesting. Obviously, we absolutely condemn any violence whatsoever. Dreadful scenes, as you were saying there, about those 27 people who don't have homes to go to this evening because of that. Is there some understanding of some people who might want to peacefully protest that this conversation actually has to be had in Northern Ireland to some degree? Or are there some people who say everybody out in the streets last night was, shouldn't have been there?
No, that certainly is not the case. I mean, a lot of people want it to be out. They want it to be out peacefully protesting. The police themselves knew that there would be protests and hoped that most of it would be peaceful. But if you know yourself, Peter, where it's exactly 1 year since the same thing happened, or something very similar happened in Ballymena, when a couple of people who weren't born here, shall we say, were accused of a sexual assault on a young girl, and that caused the riots in Ballymena, which is, as you know, 25 miles away from Belfast. So it's actually a similar scenario about what sparked this off, and I do think we've seen the worst of it on this occasion, but it will go on maybe for maybe another night or so. As you know, the schools in Belfast all closed today just before lunchtime, and there was meant to be, as you know, an anti-immigration march at the City Hall in Belfast earlier on this evening. That didn't materialise. Only 3 people turned up.
3 people turned up, yeah, I saw that. In fact, some of them were getting photos with some officers who've been featured in a recent documentary, which was a very interesting thing.
But if you know there's going to be a riot nearby, rather than run away from it, in Northern Ireland, people tend to run towards it, and that's certainly what's happening up at Glengormley at the moment.
Yeah. John, it's a shame that the subject matter, but it's a pleasure to interview you, and you may or may not remember this, but believe it or not, it was 31 years ago that you published a letter from me in your Have a Rattle column in Ireland Saturday Night, and that was the first time I saw my name in print, and 31 years later we're still both at it.
Not the last time you'll see your name in print, but yeah, it's good to have someone of the same accent speaking, you know.
Well, good to talk to you, John. Thank you very much indeed. That's John Laverty there. He's the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph. And just to update you on the England versus Costa Rica match, England's final pre-World Cup warm-up match has been delayed until at least 10 o'clock tonight due to lightning strikes and inclement weather in Orlando in Florida. So please don't turn over. Stay with us for at least the next 20 minutes. And stay with Patrick Hoskin, of course, as well. But if you are going to watch that England match, you can't do so for another 20 minutes because there's been some lightning there. We're going to speak to Joel in London, who has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Joel, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Oh, hello. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And thank you for having me. I just thought it would be interesting to have an opinion of someone that is not from this country but quite agrees with a lot that's been said, you know.
Where are you from originally, Joel, yourself?
Well, I'm Portuguese. I've been in this country for 10 years. I'm very lucky to have arrived in this country pre-Brexit, and I've, had the opportunity to get a job and have a career, and I'm very grateful to this great country. And I think if you allow me to say, and I think I represent a good portion of immigrants in this country.
I agree with you.
That we understand that we are here as guests, and I do not understand this political correctness that is going around, this almost moral superiority from the governments and the governments of the UK. We understand that we are guests in this country, and we just want the opportunity to work, to pay our taxes, to get on with our lives. We don't need hands out. I'm not here to get a free house or to get on the benefits.
Well, I wonder, Joel, if there are people who are here for the wrong reasons, if there are people who don't do
absolutely
all. Well, no. I know you agree with me on that point, but what is it like for you when you're hearing all this rhetoric about immigration, saying not all immigrants, but a number of immigrants are on the take, they're coming over here on small boats, some of them, thousands of them, and they're getting all these things that they shouldn't get. You're someone who works for a living, been here for 10 years, paid your taxes, delighted to be here. You've used the phrase guests in this country. That must be really frustrating for you when you're someone who's playing by the rules and then there are loads of people who don't.
Of course it's frustrating, and I feel the pain of people from this country and people from abroad. They're paying their taxes. It's taking the mickey, as we say in this country, because in many situations people are coming from countries where you can't speak your mind, you can't pray to the God that you want, you can't even love the people that you want to love, and all of a sudden when you come here and it's a lovely and caring and accommodating country, and it's like a free market, and they feel like they can abuse of the system because it's a system that is built on belief and on trust. And if you're coming from a country where it's all about take, and you don't understand that you need to give into society for this to work, then it starts falling apart. And then we get to this situation where I live in central London, and there's kids running around with knives. There's steaks with alarms in the shops. Like, I go to the shops and the steak has an alarm. Why does the steak have an alarm? Like, when did this country... how did we get here?
Well, chocolate, washing up liquid, there's so many of those.
Absolutely.
I mean, do you think you want to stay here, Joel? Do you want to stay here?
Well, I'm starting to doubt, I honestly start to doubt also for the cost of living and how hard it is to get a house. I pay a lot to live in central London, to be able to afford a rent in central London. I still don't have kids. I don't know if I could raise kids and afford to raise kids, because we all know how much it costs to send a kid for a child to daycare, wherever it is, So it's becoming increasingly hard, but also this whole madness that is going around at the moment doesn't help, because I could potentially make an effort, but then I see, and I live in central London, like I was saying, in one of these buildings that part of the building is, private tenants, but it's still also owned by a lot of council. And I see a lot of what's going on here. These people don't want to work. They just want a free house. And they've been raised like that. It goes from father to child to, it passes on generation, this mentality that the government owes you something.
Well, listen, I think
own you anything.
Speaking of mentalities, Joel, I think you have the right mentality. I think you have the right way of thinking about these things, and you speak an awful lot of common sense. So thank you, and please give me a ring anytime on any issue, whether it's immigration or anything else. That's Joel, who's Portuguese and has been living in London for the last 10 years. Stephen's been in touch and says, such challenging times in the UK, unrest on the streets that no politician wants to understand or talk about what the baseline cause is. In fairness, some politicians do, but a fair point, I suppose. Uncontrolled illegal immigration, cost of living crisis, tax up, energy bills up, and a mess of a government. The left-wing Jew haters and anyone else who does not buy their beliefs in politics. The real extremists and Nazis for the 21st century. Different coloured flags, but the same behaviour. The country needs some sort of reset, says Stephen. The FIFA World Cup kicks off tomorrow, and our friends at talkSPORT are sending you and a friend straight to New York City with Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier. It's the ultimate trip to watch England face Panama live at the MetLife Stadium. Return flights, hotel, match tickets and spending money all taken care of. Plus Adidas is throwing in the official Trionda match ball and a fresh pair of boots. Don't miss out. Here is how to enter.
For your chance to win, head to our friends at talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close on the 12th of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Speaking of the World Cup, talkSPORT have teamed up with Meantime to create a lager in time for the competition. It's called So Good Lager, which will be poured from all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. So whether you're watching the action this summer or settling in for an afternoon with your friends, make sure you check out talksport.com/SoGood to find your nearest pub. So good, 18 plus. Please drink responsibly. Right then, a couple more calls and we will speak to Christian in Belfast before the end of the programme and Petri Hoskin too, so a busy 11 minutes. Let's speak to Robert in London first. You're very welcome. Actually, Robert, I'll come back to you in a second. Apologies, it's just a dynamic situation in Belfast. I want to go to Christian first. Christian, tell us the latest there. Where are you now and what's happening?
Yeah, so we're down, I don't know if you recognise this Tesco petrol station. It's Northcott Shopping Centre, and you can see the clouds of smoke behind me. We've just looped right round away from all the sort of main, sort of other groups of press, and we've come to the sort of side that the protesters are on. As you can see, we're heading down to that cloud of smoke that's just behind me. That's where we're going, and we've just cut through a housing estate and we're sort of approaching it from the back.
Yeah, it's. I mean, do things feel calm there? I see a couple of mass youths behind you there, walking in the shot there, and we can see as well. There's some smoke behind you. What's happening there?
Yeah, so that's where we're heading now. We're heading to that cloud of smoke. That is effectively where the protesters are. And that's where the water cannon's trying to push the protesters back from. So we're approaching it from the protest side as opposed to the police side, which is the side that we were on before when we were reported to you before.
Sure. And how do things feel? Do things feel as if they're calming down or ramping up?
No, I think it's definitely ramping up, Peter.
Okay. Christian, thanks for all your reporting last night and tonight. Really appreciate it. That's Christian Drogan there from Watchman UK on the ground in Belfast. We'll bring you right up to date, as I'm sure Petri will as well during her programme. She's on between 10 and 1. We'll talk to her in just a few minutes about what's on her programme. But first, I want to go back to Robert in London. Robert, sorry for the false alarm there. Thanks for hanging on the line. Yeah. What would you like to say?
Yeah, thanks. I think that people are waking up. And what people are realising that every time, we've been through a few of these cycles, every time there's an election, these politicians tell us what we want to hear. So they actually know what we want to hear. And if you look at the Brexit vote and the vote for the UKIP before that, in one of the by-elections, they got 4 million votes. There have been consistent votes over the last 20 years where the British people have said, directly and indirectly, they wanted to control the immigration.
Oh, totally. They've been lied to. I mean, 2010, the Conservatives said they'd sort it out. 2015, Conservatives said they'd sort it out. 2016, Brexit, a lot of that was about immigration. 2017, and I was, working for the Conservatives at that point, they said they'd sorted immigration. And then we're into, 2019, get Brexit done, take back control, all of that kind of stuff. 2024 as well. Well, maybe not 2024, Labour, but Labour certainly made the argument that they'd get some control on it and they'd abandon the Rwanda plan. We've been lied to for years.
For years. And, just to point out, Boris Johnson, get Brexit done, in 1 year, he let in 1.4 million people net. So not net. So that was 1.4 gross. So, but the net figure was still 900,000. Some bonkers numbers. And so what's happened is we've got this amazing. I mean, if you go back to Magna Carta and whatever it's called, we are a great country. I'm half Caribbean and half British.
Okay.
And if you look at, I've lived in dictatorships, right? We really got a lot of ideas right. But the thing about the parliamentary system and all the checks and balances built into it, it relies on one single point linkage, that if it fails, it doesn't work. The whole thing doesn't work. And that's you have to have trust in your MP.
Yeah,
so when he's telling you what he's going to do... and
I think, Robert, I don't know what you think, but I think we've seen a complete breakdown in trust in politics and politicians in my political lifetime. You can maybe date it back to Watergate or before that or whatever, but definitely in my political lifetime, the last 20 years or so, there's just been a huge breakdown in that trust.
Right, and so what happens next is that so that trust is gone, so we send these people to Parliament, and where people are angry now, where the anger comes from is, one, you've been duped repeatedly, but two, countries and political systems can survive when there's a bit of corruption at the top, because the people know that's how leaders are, and as long as they're acting in your interest, people will forgive that bit of corruption.
It's really, really interesting point.
The perception now is that they're not acting in our interest.
Well, that's it too. And so many people have that perception and have made that point to me. Really interesting points there, Robert. Thank you. Sorry to end the call, but I just want to get two more callers in before I speak to Petri. One of them is Keith in Huddersfield. Keith, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening. First, Benjamin Button, he's a person that said on television that we should send pensioners to Rwanda. He actually said that on
I missed that, but okay.
Right.
He's a controversial man.
He's diverse. He's as bad as what he's telling the other people are. But that's not what you phoned about. Today, I tried to get you when you're with Mrs. Brewer regarding... Julia, regarding what the Prime Minister said. I think it was the last question he were answering.
Yes, he says the same thing all the time in the final question,
As I understand it, he's leader of the Labour Party, but he's the Prime Minister of Great Britain.
Yes.
That's right. He said near end, if you look at it, and please confirm it and make sure I'm right, he said that he would making sure that he was looking after the people that voted for him, the Labour Party.
Well, he should be voting, he should be looking after everybody, shouldn't he?
Yeah, but that's what he said.
Okay,
do you know what? Please, and if you get a chance, just...
I will do that. Keith, I will do that on the way home. I will have a look at exactly what Keir Starmer said. I'm very happy to do that. Andy in Hull, final call of the evening. I think pensions are on your mind, Andy.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief. That Benjamin Butterworth, he does talk a load of rubbish to me. He goes on about this £300,000 that we're supposed to have. I started work when I was 15. And I basically signed a contract with the government to say I'll work till I'm 65. The government now have moved the goalposts, so I now work till I'm 67, and they may move it further up from that.
Yeah.
What I did, and what most of my generation did, is we started work when we left school, and we paid into the system. Most of these young uns now like him, and it always amazes me that it's always these young contributors that say get rid of the triple lock and everything else. I think there's a lot more that this government can do with regards to the welfare budget. Let's get.
Where should the money come from to keep the triple lock, do you think, Andy?
Well, let's look at some of these people who've never worked. There we've got a shortage of people. We need people from abroad to come and fill these job gaps.
A lot of those are very highly skilled technical jobs, though.
But people can train to do those jobs.
Yeah, you're right.
My job's technical. I trained to do my job. I couldn't do the job I do now when I left school at 16.
Yes.
But I learned to do that job, and I did an apprenticeship to do that job.
Okay.
But we seem as if the pensioners are always an easy target because they can't fight back, they can't do anything. So let's take the winter fuel allowance away. Easy target.
Well, they totally misjudged that one, Andy. Absolutely. Listen, you make some really good points, and thank you for them. That's Andy in Hull there. Thanks also to Mark, who's been in touch on WhatsApp, and he says, I've just been for a walk with the dog through fields and over streams on a beautiful sunny evening. I should have been full of appreciation, but all I could think of as I looked at the glorious British countryside was, how do I save my country? I do not think that is a question I will be able to banish, says Mark. Lots happening this evening. We're going to keep you updated in our news bulletins, and indeed, I'm sure, on Petrie's show about what's happening in Belfast. She's with me now. Hi, Petrie.
Hello there.
How are you?
We're on it. I'm very well. How are you?
Good. Yes, very well. Yeah.
Oh, it's Pink Wednesday. I forgot.
It is. Yeah. On Wednesdays we wear pink. Yeah.
Forgot.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, we're going to continue, obviously, looking at what's going on in Belfast and keep everybody updated with anything if anything changes. Also, of course, Donald Trump and now Pete Hegseth has said that they're going to hit Iran very hard tonight. So it'll probably be about 10:30, 11 o'clock, as it was last night, so we'll keep everybody updated on that as well. But kicking off the programme, we're going to be talking to the head of immigration and public law about the immigration being a national security threat. That was what was mentioned earlier on. So
it was Jonathan Hall, wasn't it, the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation?
Yeah, and it's just a really interesting question, really, is to see how we deal now with immigration. So this is a guy who's given lots of advice to government. He's spoken about this. He knows all about this. So it'd be really interesting what, in fact, we can do. Because I was saying last night, it's all very well getting angry, but you know, what are the legal processes we can do to change this? So that's what we're going to be looking at first of all. We are then going to be looking at defence spending and how woefully pathetic that seems to be, and looking at AI as the system seems to be getting into our law and order now. But also at midnight,